Welcome to Talking in Stations, a show about EVE Online. We used to be called a podcast, but I think we've grown past that. We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the infamous Red Baron of Bombers, the boat. And we're going to talk about Feast and Famine, what's going on with Delve. Is it being dismantled or have they just begun to fight? And all sorts of things. Of course, the Alliance tournament just ended last week. So this is going to be a great show. Strap in. We have great experts. Let's talk about EVE Online. And first, I want to say hello to Caleb, who's here with us today.
Hey, guys.
And Elise Randolph.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Suitonia is with us.
Hey, everyone.
Hateless also.
Hello, guys.
And of course, the big red boat in a big red sweater.
Hi.
All right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned the red sweater because my where I teach, the school colors are red and silver. So I've got like 3 red sweaters, got like sports stuff for because I coach, and yeah, so lots of red.
All fits in. Who's the guy behind you there?
This was an image someone made for me after I bombed like 200 Ishtars.
Oh,
So it's like an image of me.
I love it. Well, we're gonna get to bombing. Let's actually start right there with Patch Day. Torpedoes got fixed up. What did you guys think of that? Let's have a discussion.
Maybe a little too much. They got range as well as application, and before their range was really bad. Javelin torpedoes on a bonus boat would reach maybe 60 kilometers. Now they're going, I can get a goal in the reach 137 with Javelin. It's a little silly. And they also have a little bit of an application buff, which is not insane, but at the same time, it makes them viable in comparison to other close range platform weapons on battleships, which makes them a very solid choice on missile boats now. And they outperform crews more times than not when they're in range. That's really fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that.
The extra range, that wasn't in the initial dev blog, was it? Or
It was, but they actually increased it. I think they said they were going to increase the flight time or the velocity. They didn't say, but they actually ended up doing both. So the range bonus that they gave it was actually double what they said they were going to do.
All right, yeah, because that was my main thing when I was looking at this. I was like, oh, this is great. They apply better, but what about the range? Now the range is like quite good. I was looking at some like fun possible fits, and there's like a Tempest option now too, because the Tempest has 4 missile slots. So you can just have a Torp Tempest just chilling. It looks really fun. A nice quality of life improvement for Torps, which haven't really ever been a big thing. I know I'm sure some people will be mad that I say that because they're like, oh, I fly Torps all the time. But it hasn't ever really been like a mainline doctrine since Torpedoes did splash damage like 15 years ago. So
And Torpedo Ravens.
yeah.
They did 1,000 DPS at 200 kilometers.
So
Yeah,
it's nice to see that
possible.
back.
Does anyone actually have any idea of why? Is there a grand plan, or is it just lol 10?
Yeah, they were trying to nerf bombers, but also buff, but like not nerf the actual gun class. So torpedoes are like the mainstay of bombers, but they needed to nerf bombers without outright nerfing the module that they use for damage. So they buffed torpedoes and then nerfed bombers themselves. So like the torpedoes actually, as a side effect, made the Phoenix better, gave the Phoenix a whole lot more fun. You'll notice I used one when I killed a Titan and a super carrier, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
I forgot the siege. Sorry.
So I do want to add, in almost all PvE instances, there's one exception before the patch where, I'm not going to give any exception, but in almost all PvE instances, crews were superior to torpedoes because of the application, regardless of the size of the target. More often than not, before cruise missiles would do more damage and apply better than torpedoes did. Now it is actually true that the closer range weapon is the better applying, better damage dealing weapon system on missile boats, which is, I think, really good for them.
Yeah. So Nick, go ahead.
I was going to say, through all of like 2020, CCV has been buffing close range ammo, and kind of trying to buff brawling the entire time. So they have like these small battleship buffs, like patch after patch after patch, Tech 2 damage buffs, patch after patch, missile application buffs for another patch, resists nerfed after patches. So they're really trying to push this. We want more stuff exploding. So it does make sense that they never really saw the uptake in torpedo boats, right? So people have been flying more blaster boats since the changes and stuff like that. But you know, they I guess they just didn't see it with torpedoes, so they went above and beyond and made them super good. So that's really nice to see. I'm super stoked to like fly around in like a Tempest, because no one's going to expect it.
Yeah, and then in PvE, what is surprising is the Maccloud has been regarded as the king of missions for such a long time, and this is almost able to beat out the Maccloud in several instances in performance, which is astounding to say that a ship that can compete with the Maccloud for mission clear time, which is insane because of this application and range buff.
What you said there, Elise, they seem to be buffing brawling, because a lot of the wizardry they're doing now has to do with like keeping you in the fight, keeping you in the brawl. I'm thinking of recloning to motherships or super capitals, or even the battleship frigate bay. Like they seem to want to cause the collisions with the ESS changes, so that people have more reasons to go into fight and to conflict with one another. But once you're there, they want to keep you there fighting longer.
I mean, that'd be a nice sentiment and all, but nobody gets to fly battleships because Mutants and Eagles are like the best ship period right now. As evidenced by the other day, there were 900 hacks on the field between both sides. Not a single battleship.
No one gets to fly battleships in like huge or in like 50 plus scale, right? But when you get down to smaller scale, people are flying battleships all the time. Especially if you look in high sec, which is, I know, a weird place to look. But in high sec, literally everyone's in a battleship. No one's taking anything but a battleship.
Well, that's like, if you look at like, okay, I'll use Snuff as an example here because they're a good example. Like when you get to the small scale, like 50 or below, if you've got 10 Guardians, or in their case, like 10 Rep Legions, you'll never kill a battleship. Like they're just, HP is too high. And if the other group doesn't have more than 50, you just don't have enough to alpha. And if you can't alpha, you're not going to break through that rep. So yeah, it's cool that they're buffing it for small scale, but they need to make it so that people start using them in big scales, because that's, I guess, where you start to see like the changes, I guess, matter. Maybe, I don't know.
They do have. I mean, there have been. So this is the problem, right? Because we have these weird like one-off fights or like two-off fights that skew the metrics. And CCB are just like looking at the metrics, I feel, a lot of the time. So like, oh, look, 1,000 Raven died in one fight. Battleships must be fine. And then no one else uses battleships unless there's like a Keep Star Siege or something like that.
You mean like they did with the drone nerf?
Yeah.
Suitonia, a little more from you there. What did you think of this patch, and how does it work in your gameplay?
Oh, it's pretty nice. I think they definitely overbuffed them though. Torpedoes are crazy now. Like a Torbargus can outdamage a Vindicator at 0 kilometers now, pretty much. So it is a bit ridiculous. They did nerf bombers to counteract it, but I think bombers actually got a buff overall, because bombers actually have more range than they had before the patch. And in Surgical Strike, the Tech 2 Rage missiles getting buffed on them was also just like a huge buff for them. So I think they're still like, bombers are probably still too strong. But yeah, I think it's a good change overall, especially since like torpedoes are never going to be useful in like a big fleet situation, because it's missile mechanics and like close range weapons. So I think it's like one of the things that it's safe for them to kind of overbuff.
They're not that fast. They're still relatively slow. I think the fastest a torpedo is going to go is 9,000 kilometers a second, reasonably. In a few situations, probably slower than that.
Yeah, and there's also like how missiles interact with tie-dye and that sort of stuff that just makes them too difficult to use in fleet fights.
No, yeah. You keep calling them a close-range weapon. Isn't that a little bit off?
Oh yeah, I mean they hit out to like 70 kilometers now, so yeah, it's a bit ridiculous.
So hold on, let's compare them to guns. So if we were to say autocannons are also a close range weapon, right? So an autocannon on an unbonus ship has a 24 kilometer fall off. Rage missiles have a similar statistic. They are comparable in range, but guns have the advantage of fall off because fall off range. So if your optimal is 5 and your fall off is 25, at 25 kilometers you're doing 50% of your damage. You can still hit out another 20 because you have 20 kilometers of fall off. You can literally hit out 25% of your damage all the way out to, wouldn't that be 45 kilometers? So the reach of guns is actually outstanding when you consider in and actually calculate the fall off and look at that and see what it truly is. They have that huge advantage, whereas missiles have a hard cutoff, and then there's certain mechanics with your navigation that can reduce that range or even change the way that works entirely because your ship is so fast or whatever. And guns have the advantage that they don't have that drawback. That is huge.
So that means we need to buff blasters. Hopefully next patch, blaster buff. That would be dope.
The battleship weapons would be good, in my opinion.
I don't think the buff went far enough with the torpedoes. Just my professional opinion. Like,
the bomber guy.
The Phoenix? No, I don't fly bombers to torpedo, right? Like, because that's
he's a bomber.
Oh yeah, he's bombs. But yeah, the the Phoenix is still the worst haul dread. Period. Even though it has a 70k range, that's still 30 kilometers short than a basic rev. Its high slots require cap, and so to like everything, like you don't really have room on a Phoenix to do things. But you can add all these damage mods to the bottom, but that still gets you a max range of 70, and you still can't hit a moving frigate. Whereas a Revelation can kill anything at 100 kilometers, even if it's an interceptor going 4k a second. So the Rev the Phoenix needs more love in terms of the torpedoes. And then also on the same scale of like this gave a buff to Phoenixes, but it's still like number 3 on dread damage with torpedoes. So it's like while they went, I gave it a little bit in order to like a little bit less on the battle or bombers. They didn't go far enough. They need more, a lot more.
Right. You guys seem like you're on different spectrums on this. So some people say it's a little too buff. Some people say it wasn't enough. Well, but we're talking about the Phoenix now, the Dreadnought.
Yeah.
So I just brought up a simulation of a meme kind of HA dread that I've used to do solo roams, and it was successful in the past. I'm looking at Javelin ammo, and it's going 132 kilometers with some polybolus, of course. But I mean,
but how many do you have?
A lot better.
Yeah, but how many do you have fit?
That's 3 launchers with 1, 2, 3 polybolus, and
3 of those. But then you're giving up all like your damage. You're giving up low slots that could be used. Like, see, the thing is, here's the thing about like the difference between that and say a Revelation. A Revelation can do all its tank, still have 2 damage mods, and then still have room for 2 tracky computers. Like the Phoenix doesn't really have all that. So if you don't dedicate all those low slots to that, it's still like I think it's under 100. But I haven't looked since they nerfed their range. I'm just talking about damage application. Like it's really bad. I'm sorry.
It was bad. The application buff that they got, I think that they do a lot better than they did in the past. And after flying everything but the Revelation, so I haven't flown a Revelation, so I probably don't know too well. But having flown 3 of the Dreadnoughts, back to back, literally for a week, I did 7 of them in a row. I found the Phoenix to be a fairly enjoyable solo thing to fly. The thing that it sucked with it is Typhoons would sit there and orbit you at 75 because they knew you'd only reach to 71. And now you'll reach to 137, or I just looked again, it's 100 it's 73 for rage torpedoes. That's the point blank range torpedoes.
There's a reason I injected a Moros, all 5s on a Moros, because I got tired of the Phoenix. As much as I love Phoenixes. For example, I dropped my Phoenix on those super carriers. Can we talk about the super carrier kill?
Yeah. Actually, we're going to save it just for a second. If we could finish this patch, is there anything else in this patch that you guys thought was pretty good?
Well, speaking of the Moros, maybe you can talk about this DBRB, but the Moros actually got a bit of a slot change. CCP took away one of the mids and gave it an extra low.
Yeah, so they basically took away what made the Moros great. So they took away a mid slot and gave it a low slot. So it has the same slot layout as a Revelation, but in terms of pause, it has a 45-kilometer less range. Without that extra slow slot or that mid slot, you can't fit a web or something to like slow ships down that make blasters able to track. And it needed that really badly because what happens is like the Rev can fit 2 tracking computers, it can fit a cap booster, and it can fit something else. And then the Rev's just going to kill anything with 100 kilometers. The Moros doesn't have that because the Moros doesn't have Scorch. And Scorch is like the most powerful ammo in the game outside of what is currently used in hacks. But I'm just saying that just in general, Scorch is a really strong close range gunned long range ammo. It always has been. It's the reason people flew Zealots for so long. Legions are used for so long. This is it. It's great tracking and everything. But when they changed the slot layout of the Moros, they just made it a cheaper rev, like a shittier rev. Like there's just nothing good about it now. Because like the gun damage on a Moros is less.
Void higher, but yeah, null is far less. Null is very far below Scorch.
Let me tell you what I did with mine. So I've had well, up until recently, I just moved it. I had a Moros logged off for like 3 months doing things, and it wouldn't die. Like it just kept not dying. And then they made that change, and I literally had to take off like one of my cool mods that I had in the mids. I think it was like an extra point or something. And I had to put on a Fort damage mod because I literally wasn't carrying any extra low slots other than extra damage mods. So now I have 4 damage mods on this Moros. And that 4th doesn't really do anything. It's like 1,000 damage out of like the 20,000 I do. And it's just horrible. It makes me sad. Because like it got rid of what made the Moros actually awesome. And it's the ability to fit a web. Because now I'm not going to fit a web anymore. And that was great about it when you used Hawes. Is like if anything got within 30 kilometers, it just fucking zapped. And like little interceptor gangs would show up and you'd zap them. Now you can't do that with the Moros. And there's no point in flying it. So when this one dies, I'm going to have to...
Let's not forget drifting fits. They depend on the web to keep things behind them.
Villy in chat says the gun damage is now 12% higher.
Yeah, that's with a third mag stab or something.
Okay, you lose that utility mid, so mids can be used for a point, web, or E-War. And you lose that for low slot, which a low slot can add more tank or more damage. Generally speaking, you're losing damage application because you lose your E-War, and so that just sucks. And all you can do to kind of mitigate that is put it on a tracking enhancer, which is not as powerful as the web it's not as powerful as the web. Or you can add a little bit of DPS with a magnetic field stabilizer, and that's kind of.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the Moros is really tanky, and that extra low is going to make it even more tanky. But the problem with that is that while yes, it's great and it's going to be more tanky, that doesn't really do anything because at the end of the day, tank requires cap, and you lose that extra mid slot, so you're losing the utility of maybe a double cap booster, or maybe a capital. Cap mod battery thing to stop newts, and 100 bombers with void bombs are still going to kill you just as fast if you have the extra low slot for tank as that you had before. So I just don't see the point of doing that. Like it gets rid of uniqueness. I don't like how they do that. They did this like that was cool about the Naglfar back in the day when it had the split guns. I know people don't like this, but I thought it was really cool that you could do both. I mean, I can understand the training time of it all, but that and when the Moros had drones, I thought that was freaking cool. And I see why they nerfed that, but that was neat.
Yeah, when Siege Effect drones, that was some of the dopest
thing. I think they're getting rid of some of the uniqueness of ships. And that's what's frustrating. Because it just means everyone's going to fly the same thing.
Hey, does this make Moros better at dread bombing now, potentially? Or is it still like trash because you don't have selectable damage type? Like, still going to prefer nags if you're going to go Tech 1 or something?
It depends. I personally like dropping a Moros just because I have one, because I thought it was unique. But with this change, it's just better to buy a Rev. Or if you're damaged, like I guess Naglfars, because you get the options, right? Naglfars give you damage choice, but the Rev is still, I think, better overall in most cases, because, for us anyway, because a lot of our enemies fly shield tank, like Rags, Leviathans. poop ships, things like that. So in that case, revs are really awesome. But I guess it depends.
Yeah, because Moros, like an anti-cap Moros now can do like 16k DPS, so it's like pretty crazy. It's like almost like two old
mod.
like Red Bull Nags worth of DPS with Void.
Yeah, it's with the fourth damage mod, 17.5. Ends up being like 1,300 or 1,400 more. Not enough to justify it though.
Okay. So is there anything else in this patch that caught your guys' eye? Something that's going to change people's behavior in this last
there's a Griffin Navy issue buff that I guess might be worth mentioning, although it's not really like a massive thing.
What'd you think of it?
It's kind of interesting. So the Griffin Navy issue is obviously like a pretty terrible ship. After CCP changed the way ECM mechanics work to taunt, because it was basically like a 1v1 like trap control ship that would just like jam whatever it was fighting so they couldn't fight back and kill them. And like after CCP made it so you can always lock whoever's ECMing you, it obviously lost like the one niche that it had. So what they've done instead is they've given it a very large drone bay. I believe it can have it has 50 meters cubed of drones, which is really big for a frigate. I think it actually has like the biggest drone bay of any frigate now. But it has a drone penalty on it, like 85% penalty to drone damage. You're not using those drones to do DPS, and it has a bonus to a ECM drone duration, so the ECM drone jams last longer. So the idea of the Griffin Navy issue now is you put a bunch of ECM drones on someone, and hopefully you kill them before they can clear your ECM drones, then kill you, which makes a lot more sense for what the ship used to be. And it's also, I think, better gameplay than what the ship used to be too, because now you can actually fight back instead of being permagen by a Griffin Navy issue. It's more like of a DPS rush ship, right? Like you can glass cannon your GNI, put your ECM drones. Hopefully you can kill the other guy before he can clear out your ECM drones and then kill you.
Yeah, it's an interesting change. I think that it makes them possibly be used in fleets, because if the drones get on and do the scram, then they're obviously, or not the scram, the ECM, then they're not going to be shot at immediately. Whereas before, oh look, the Griffin's jamming me, let me just pop that real quick. Now they actually have that, and then the ECM duration is an interesting way of buffing it rather than buffing the strength of the jam. It does make it so that they're not more likely to jam you, but when they do jam you, it's just going to be that much worse.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does give you a path to actually fight it, right? I still think the ship is kind of like the redheaded stepchild that CCB doesn't know what to do with, right? They put the ship in because they needed a Navy issue frigate before the ECM changes were tweaked. So it was really strong for like a close range jammy brawler guy. Then they changed ECM, made the ship completely useless. Actually, probably the worst ship you could actually fly. And now they're just trying to shoehorn some neat little gimmicks here. I think it's fun, right? Suitonia has way better read on it than I do, right? So the idea is you throw out the drones and you like shoot them down. Hopefully you can last before they kill your drones. So I don't know, it's neat. It's fun. I don't think people are going to use it all that much.
There is a potential drawback to this. If the ECM fails on the drones, it's going to take them longer to get another attempt in. So maybe the shorter cycle time was better. That's kind of one thought that I had, or one thought that, of course, Maccloud reminded me of. But
I think they still cycle the same. I think they still cycle every 20 seconds. It's just when the ECM drones jam you now, they last at 7.5 seconds instead of 5 seconds.
Have we tested this? If the subjam is, or if they attempt every 5 seconds versus every 7.5 seconds?
Well, they try to jam you every 20 seconds, but if they do jam you, then you get jammed for 5 seconds. It's like a CCP nerfed ECM drones like a while back, so that they're more used to escape rather than to like win fights. And that's why I'm guessing the 10% increase makes them jam for 7.5 seconds instead of 5.
Yeah, but they still attempt every 20, right?
Yeah, so I think they still attempt at the same rate. So assume they'll be a lot more reliable, I guess, because like if you put out ECM drones now, there's like a 10-second period where they could shoot your Griffin Navy issue, even if they didn't clear the drones.
Yeah, see.
I was gonna say one of the fun things that you can do is you can put some actual jammers, even though they're not bonused on your Griffin Navy issue. And then if you jam the target that you're shooting, they actually can't lock your drones back. So you do get you can kind of keep them in a permanent old school jam cycle a little bit, but that's like super RNG focused.
Drones don't have a particularly strong jam either. They're kind of easy to counter with the sensor skills. They don't jam as heavy as modules do. They're not that strong compared to, say, an actual ECM module.
Yeah, I mean, you can. I think people who have been jammed by ECM drones will argue about that, but you're absolutely right. Like it is, it's like 1 or something, so it's really, really small on like it's like a 1 in 20 chance for a jam if you've got like perfect skills and everything like that on a destroyer or above.
All right, last word. Go ahead.
I think that's the problem ever since. I mean, a long time ago is that jamming is so useless now outside of like hope you get lucky and get away. Like the thing is compared to other ECM, like if you don't have all 5s and like jam skills and recons and stuff, it makes the Falcon or like the Rook completely useless because if you don't have over 10, it's just not going to jam very well or very frequently. Whereas like the other ECM skills, target painting, lock range reduction, things like that are guaranteed just to various degrees. And I think they need to get back to that with ECM. It needs to be like a guaranteed thing for like a set amount of time instead of this chance thing. And then that time is based on skills. So if it's a 20-second cooldown on drones, make it so that if you have all 5s, it can jam for 15 seconds. Like it can really do some impact. But if you don't have any skills, maybe it goes for like 5 seconds, right? And instead of it, make it chance-based because the game doesn't like chance. Chance does not work at EVE. Never has. That's why only one little tiny snippet of EVE is chance-based. Everything else is guaranteed, just to various degrees. And that's what they need to fix.
There's a lot of chance-based things in this game.
Well, I mean, loot drops and stuff, but I'm talking like...
RNG or the random number generator of the...
roll the dice, hope you jam, hope you don't. I mean, the thing is even the calculations are so weird. The 13 jam strength, there's so many ships now that their jam like resistance is so insanely high or can be made insanely high that it's almost impossible to jam them. And even then, sometimes you'll get frustrated because I've flown a Falcon for 12 years now, and since I could fly one, and even before that it was a Blackbird, and like even like compared to back then for like 4 or 5 years, your jam strength was reliable. Even if your ship could get shot like it does now, that would still be reliable enough to like take
Can
down.
we just admit that the old system was incredibly toxic for small games and solo players?
That would be amazing. I used to fly small game PvP in a group called Black Ops. It was like the best thing ever.
Well,
you could rely on it.
It sucked to be on the receiving end of that, and it absolutely killed flights and made it not fun to fly solo.
Get back to that.
Okay.
All right.
Combat Rooks, look, I used to, like, I have them in Jita right now. Faction fit, like with faction missile launchers, faction lows, Rooks that are specifically designed for solo PvP, and I haven't undocked them in 8 years, okay? They're not going to get undocked. They're just stuck there. There's 3 of them. They're never going to undock because they're complete garbage.
All right, one last thing on this this patch that came out earlier this week. There has been an update to the patch that was interesting, and it is for this Black Friday. They have a sale inside of the game, which is interesting. A little meta there. So the market has a temporary reduction of 50% on sales tax for regional markets, and the sales tax is down to 2.5% or set to 2.5%, down from 5%. So they're giving you a chance to sell things up until tomorrow, I think. Or today's the last
on
day.
Sale in EVE Online. Don't forget to buy your Sable skins because they're freaking awesome looking.
Yeah. And this goes with the real life sale of $15 off Plex, actually, but usually the higher Plex groups, and those come with some specialized skins that can only be purchased there. So, but you're going to be spending really $280 to $500 ish or $400 to get the good stuff, I think.
So, do you want to break that down really quick? Because done a lot of homework on this.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So the Garmer skin is available in the base pack is normally priced at $100, and it is for, I can't remember the exact amount of Plex, but it's $100 price of Plex is $74.99, and it's coming with the Garmer skin. And then the next step up, the $212 pack, is giving the Belgorn and I can't remember which skin it is now. But it's giving the Belgorn skin and one other skin, as well as the Garmer skin, and that one is normally the $250 pack price at $212. And then the big mega super pack that's normally $500 is $420 right now, and that one gives you a Leviathan skin and an Obelisk skin, as well as the other one, as well as the previous 3 skins that I'd mentioned. And then when you use the Plex to buy multiple trading character skins or multiple character trading things, you get a Stratios skin. And then when you use the Plex to Plex your account to get another month of game time, you get the Rattlesnake skin. So that's how all the skins are generated. I'm not sure if they're going to come back in the game at another time, but a small hint on that is that there's a date on the description which indicates that there's a far less chance that they'll be reintroduced to the game now. Right now in the market, they're extremely cheap. You can buy them for what they cost to get into the game. They're extremely cheap. Buy them up, guys. Now's the time.
So rare skins are being dumped on the market for ISK, and it's a good time to buy those up, is your advice, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've already been buying them up. I may have skin in this game, and I might be biased.
Oh, nice pun. All right. Real quick, we have a guest that's jumped in, and this is a good friend of mine from years back, a very, very well-known player to people who read about EVE Online. I would like to say hello to Niden from Crossing Zebras. He was the editor there for many years. How you doing, Niden?
I'm trying to figure out how my push-to-talk works in Discord.
It's usually mapped to a mouse, usually, but not always. How you doing, man?
Yeah, me now. Oh man, look. First thing, I walk into this room, yeah, and it's like a time machine. It's like the same people. I know most of you still, and this is like, wow, like it's just the same people. Nothing changes. Yeah, there's some. I've been reading up on what's been happening in EVE, right? So there's a lot been happening since I was here last, 2.5 years ago. So there's a lot of that, but it's the same people, man. It's so weird.
Isn't it a nightmare? Is it a nightmare of sorts?
No, it's good because, I made the horrible mistake of playing another space game. So I bought like one of the Mass Effect games because everybody had been raving about that for years. And I thought, I'll give that a shot. And then it was space and it was spaceships. And man, I got thinking about EVE again and I couldn't stop. I really tried to stop. And I also have this friend, friend at work, and he's also an old EVE player. He hasn't touched EVE for 10 years, yeah. And then we started talking about it, and I knew, like, when we started talking about it, it was too late. I was fucked already. We were screwed. Now we're both back, and it's so much fun, man. He's not seen EVE for 10 years, so I'm kind of rusty, but he's like, what's going on? How do I move my stuff? It's all in null. Holy shit.
It's a different game.
Well, it's different, but it's the same. I mean, you have us old timers reminiscing about, back in the day and we didn't get any help and all that stuff. The usual vet talk, how it usually sounds, right?
Sure. Is he in Snuff with you? You went back to Snuff, right?
No, fuck no, dude. I'm not doing like 3 o'clock pings ever again. I'm not sitting in my Titan in 6 hours for no reason. Fuck caps, fuck supers, fuck all that shit. I'm going back to my old life. I'm already in kills and I'm just flying cheap T1 shit just while I'm learning the game. But I'm the only reason I'm even going to fly that Titan is to have it just sit there and be a portal, and that's it, man. I'm not flying caps again. Forget that.
Just to bridge you around. Okay, so where are you in the game? Are you in high sec or null sec? What are you doing?
Back to my roots, man. I'm in low sec. I intend to stay there. Nice. Just small gang stuff. That's what I want to do. And I already found a corp. I've got this old mate of mine. Actually, the guy who got me to stop playing EVE back in 2005. he's back, and he got me back in as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of people coming back. It's not just for the war. I guess. I
was just gonna say, like one of the topics I'm kind of expecting was already discussed to death, and maybe it is. You guys can tell me, but like the effect of the pandemic on the numbers. I saw an interview with Hilmar like a few months ago. I think it was, and they're seeing like people are coming back to Eve because obviously they're sitting at home, have nothing better to do, right? But it's going to be good times for Eve, right? Is it?
Yeah, we got a nice almost 15-20% bump, I'd say. Of course, it had other factors as well, but definitely we saw the effect from the quarantine.
I honestly think that this game's in the best state it has been since I started playing it.
You are crazy.
The spring. The spring.
What Eve are you playing, dude? Like, the economy is about to go to the worst state it's ever been since the game was founded.
We're going to talk about that next, actually. Feast or famine. Okay. Niden, welcome back. It's good to have you back. Hang out with us. Let's have some discussions here about the drone change that's been presented, because this leads into feast or famine, which is a favorite topic of Caleb there. But first, the drone change. What is going to change with the drones, Elise?
All right. So before times, which was like 2 days ago, your drones, if you set them to
before time.
I literally saying back in my day, because I get to say that a lot nowadays.
Exactly. So, and actually, I'm probably wrong here. It probably hasn't come in yet, right? I haven't played with drones.
Yeah, it's not there yet.
So we're still in the before times. If you're listening to this next week, then before times. But so drones, if you set them to aggressive, they will continue to attack NPCs and other PvP ships or other player ships that, once you initiate that order. What is changing is CCP are making it so for each and every target, for when you're PvEing, so killing NPCs, you will have to re-aggro on the target that you want. So days are gone where the drones will just go out and clear everything for you. The people were like, oh, what is the implication of this? Is this for botting? This is absolutely not for botting. This is for people who like go out in a Gila or a Vexor Navy issue, go out to their favorite anomaly, throw out drones, and then go watch Netflix or something and hope they don't get killed. So drones are now more active. It brings them more in line with other weapon systems where you don't really have the ability to, automatically do anything, with the exception of friend or foe missiles. So maybe that's going to be the new thing that they're going to nerf. I don't know. But yeah, so as you can imagine, a lot of very passionate people on both sides of this. It's probably more heavily favored to the why are you doing this? Why CCP camp? But there's just a ton of people also saying, oh, it's about time. I hate drones. Drones are the worst. So yeah, a lot of very passionate people about this one change. I think the one thing that probably sticks out truer than most is, why are you doing this now? Why are you just hating me over and over and over again when I'm trying to make money, CCP?
It's the one after the other thing, I think, is the way Merkelchen worded it. It's like the drone thing, like the reason that people fly Myrmidons, Vexor Navy issues and stuff like that is when you're trying to PvE in this game, I would say this game, it's about a race to the bottom. There's always a joke about Feroxes and High-Sec is the race to the bottom. It's whatever ship can do the most damage and be the cheapest to replace. Because even if you're at your keyboard, even if you're fully paying attention, ratting is so unbelievably boring that even in a super carrier that can clear anomalies in 2 minutes, it's so boring that you literally, your mind like slips away and you will lose ships. I've lost carriers just like ratting just for the hell of it because I was so bored. It was so dumb. And that's the problem with Eve is there's no engaging PvE content for like actual like damage ships. I mean, so what ends up happening is it becomes boring. So you try to find a way to make it as automated as possible so that you can take your mind off of ratting and do something engaging and fun. For example, back in the old Delve War, I would have like a ratting ship that was AFK ratting, like I think it was a Dominix. And I was actively seeing the fights. I didn't have to pay attention to the Dommy, but every 30 minutes, and I would move it, right? And I know as a game developer, they don't like that, but that was 10 years ago, and they still haven't changed PvE in any way, shape, or form.
With the exception of, they actually have kind of changed it, right? They've added new PvE elements like the Abyss.
Okay. Even all right. Let me give you an example. All right, the high sec missions you could do in bombers, like not high sec, low sec ones, where you could run around with a bomber and do like 40 different missions.
You're talking about faction warfare, yes.
Yeah, faction warfare ones. Even when that was making, like some goons were saying they were making 300 to 400 million an hour. That was so boring to me that it wasn't worth the money, right? Like, it's just.
I just want to remind people that engineering these programs constantly, always, is Maccloud, and he wants to chime in on this subject too. So if you hear him coming in, that's Maccloud, and we have Niden back here too as well. Good restraint there, by the way, Hateless. I thought you were going to jump out of your screen and reach up and jump in the boats.
But what I meant to go with
Right, dog is really helpful.
Yeah, sorry. Where I meant to go with this is like if you had it in engaging, like there's a lot of people I talk to, and I have the same sentiment. Is I play Eve for PvP, and I go play other games for PvE, right? Because they're more engaging. Like, for example, a game Path of Exile. It's a race to the top in the sense that the more gear you have and the more money you spend in the game, the more higher end the PvE content gets, and the more valuable it gets. It's kind of like this race up, like almost like a what do they call it? A exponential curve. As the more you get, the more you spend, and so on. And Eve has this unique thing: is if it did that, you'd have people risking 30 billion plus to get that top end content, and so thus they could be dying in that 30 billion.
You're ready.
Yeah, like super carry rating. But see, here's the thing. This change does one thing and one thing only. It buffs bots. Because bots don't like just warp to a site and let the drones go. They literally lock every target because a bot is as efficient as humanly possible, even inhumanely. So like a ratting hell is literally going to clear a site in a minute 30 seconds. It's a minute 30 seconds. It's exactly a minute 30 seconds because that's the fastest the game will let you go. They'll clear the site and they'll be on to the next one because they can do that. Humans can't. So this nerfs bot aspirant type players.
So if
want AFK, yeah, but
if we look at it this way, so less people AFKing in Ishtars, won't this flush out bots?
No, because bots still use Ishtars. Bots still use Ishtars and VNIs and Gillas because they're the best at what they do. This doesn't change that because a bot still locks every single target. A bot's going to go down and all 7 on grid and tell their
humans don't do that as efficiently.
No, humans don't. But that's the point. That's the whole thing here is that a bot still does it. This change will not affect bots at all. It actually hurts humans more because.
Well, yeah, no, it definitely hurts humans more, and I think that it's a change to get players actually paying attention to the game while they're playing. Dear me, I have to pay attention to the game to make it. I have to actually play the game to make profit. Oh dear, this is terrible.
I haven't PvE'd in years because every time I get excited to do something, for example, oracles, I got real excited to use them, but then it got to a point where using a single oracle is not profitable. To give you some numbers, if you AFK ratted in a VNI, just one VNI, you're making the equivalent of $4,000 a year if you were to AFK rat for 10 hours a day. Because you still have to work to the sites, you still have to like manage it. A bot doing that doubles. Okay? And so someone did the math once. I think his name was Tibbers. He's just really like math numbers person in Goons for a very long time. And he's one of those super cap FCs. He did the numbers once, and it was like back in the day when carriers could like AFK rat with drones, it was 9 carriers to equal a $35,000 salary if you were to take all that money and RMT it. So that's how much AFKing you had to do. But a bot can do that with 1 or 2 characters. Like bots don't have breaks; they don't have stops.
All right, we got it. Suitonia, what do you? Sorry. It's all right. It's good. We want this. Suitonia, what do you think of this drones change from your perspective?
Oh, I'm kind of mixed on it too. Like I do think that the content in nullsec has been nerfed for the past year, and a lot of the content is kind of stale because they haven't changed the combat anomalies or like rebalanced anything for nullsec. Like all of the like new shiny PvE stuff is in Triglavian space, or it's like the abyssal content. Like all of that PvE content's pretty good. Like nullsec hasn't really changed. I do think this is more of a nerf to multi-boxers than it is to like actual real players though. It's a lot harder, like you said, but with the raw calls, right? Like the reason why using a single raw call sucked is because tons of people were using 20 raw calls. And what this nerfs, right, is it stops you from using like 4 or 5 Ishtars at a time. It's a lot harder for you to do that. Whereas like just using one is still probably fine, or like swapping over to like a more traditional PvE ship. So I actually think it will end up buffing solo players a little bit, like one account players, I mean, because there's going to be less ISK generated in general if multi-boxes stop running drone farms. Or they'll swap to something else, but they'll probably end up making less ISK overall, or it'll be more difficult for them. And then also, if those guys aren't plexing their drone farms, or it's going to make the demand of plex fall as well. So it'll make plex easier to afford. And if you're just one guy running sites in a Tengu or something, you're going to be making more, and it'll probably cost you like slightly less to plex your account. So I do think it's like a bit of a buff to like active solo account PvEers.
Yeah, but I only ever solo count PvE. Like, from my perspective for the last 12 years, if I ever did PvE, which is very rare, because I get my money through other ways, but like if I ever do PvE, it's always, okay, what's the meta now for PvE? Like, I would go buy that ship, and I would skill into that ship, and I would go try it for a little bit, and then decide if it was worth it or not. And every time I would go and try it, it would then get nerfed in some way, just enough that a solo person would go, okay, this is not worth my time. And then they would have to find something else. And this is literally what change does. Yeah.
Yeah. Aren't we like? I'm not that anymore, I guess. But aren't media people, like even so-called even media people, the worst at talking about PvE? Because literally none of us do it. Because, like you said, making money by other means. Like I'm not fucking PvE'd in a decade. I have no idea how it works. I have no clue whatsoever.
Well, that's why we have a PvE expert like Hateless here to kind of cover that. The host needs to stay out of the way of the experts. That's what I'm trying to do, is dodge these guys. And
it's
the cat's
the one guy I don't recognize. That's the guy you pulled in here to talk about.
He's the Mozart. We call him the Mozart. Hateless is the Mozart of missions. We call him because he's so incredibly good at it. But Caleb, this has.
I have another related question though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, because I don't know how CCP are doing this nowadays, and I know I was like to catch up on Eve. I've been listening to a podcast called Less Than 10 or whatever, which is really good, by the way. And they had Rise on there. It was about a year ago. I was listening to an older episode, and there was this new team that are doing balancing, but they're just doing balancing for PvP, right? Are they like doing anything extra for the PvE side of balancing? Have a special team for it? Because they've always had issues with like keeping a team alive and protected from the big projects in the company that can focus on rebalancing stuff, because they always get pulled into
Elise, can you bring him up to speed?
The next big thing, you know?
Because Elise probably has the best vision into this.
Actually, Suitonia is probably the best because he was on the CSM lately. He's not on CSM now, but he was on the CSM previously, so he probably has a little bit more insight on how the teams work. I have honestly no idea. It seems to be more of a holistic approach where, hey, we're going to tweak this. Ecosystem guys will buff up parts of something, and then the Rise and his team will buff other stuff.
But I think, to bring you up to speed, Niden and Suitonia, you can jump in if I get this wrong, is the overall, what happened a year ago was they decided they were going to try to do some drastic measures to churn the turnover of people in EVE Online so they could have newer faces coming up, that sort of stuff, the dynamics of stuff. They tried to do it with this blanket blackout that basically was turn off the lights and nullsec. It's something that people have always wanted or said they wanted. And then when it happened, it was too dramatic, and at the same time, WoW was kicking up, so they lost some players, I'm sure. But really, a lot of people got upset about it. But other people were really fascinated with that idea. So they said, "That's too much. That's too oppressive. We'll bring that back and put a dedicated team, and really back them from the executive level." So you saw Hilmar really saying, "Yeah, we're going to put Rise in this position to do balance, and it's not just balance of PvP. It's balance of ships." Balance of economy, balance of scarcity, and we've fallen into. And then they put, Caleb, what's his name, Ratati, who is from Dust. They put him in charge of the entire group, and he's in charge of the ecosystem of EVE Online now. So they have a team that's doing like a lot of fixing of the early part of the game and cleaning up places where people get stuck and fall out of the game. That's one group, and they have a different group that's doing just balance passes and rebalance passes that have to do with economy, with scarcity of mining, with with everything that has to do with balancing the game to keep it in a healthy state. So those are the two really drivers of what they're doing. Suitonia, is there something more specific?
I think the teams are different to what they were when I was on the CSM, which was 2 years ago. But yeah, the team Talos, which is Rise that you mentioned, is sort of like a smaller team. I think it's two game developers on it. Was like a few other people, and they're just trying to do like changes like every 2 to 4 weeks or so. And they've done a really good job the last year.
Yeah, their cadence is way up on balance changes. They have a quarterly, so they do
I
four.
Think he mentioned. He mentioned like they were actually pushing. He mentioned they were pushing stuff to production after every sprint. So they would have a 2-week sprint, push to production, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and it would be like a thing that was rolling all the time. And I expect, like, just reading the notes for today's show, like drone changes, for example, that's something I'd kind of expect was coming out of that team. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's Team Talos team. So they do rapid, quick changes. They're small, minor adjustments where we have the quarterly updates, which are the larger adjustments. So we have 2 teams that are working on developing the game, and the smaller, quick one is to respond to things being broken or things being way out of place. And Talos is always looking for little improvements that can be made, so that they don't get overpassed in the larger quarterly updates. Oh, this little thing that happened, or that we wanted to change, never ended up happening because this big project came up. That's Team Talos' purpose, and that's why they exist.
Yeah. One of the big things in the last 18 months, like we're talking about a big high-level idea that CCP has, and this comes, I think, from CCP Burger, is the idea that CCP can just tinker with stuff to see what happens. Just flip some switches, make some little sprinkles here and there, and just don't be afraid of what happens. Just to see what happens, to get data. Obviously, there are levels that they're more willing to do and less willing to do, right? So Blackout probably not going to do something that level or that drastic again, but they're very much of the mindset of, hey, we can just tinker with stuff to see what happens. And I think you can actually just see how pervasive this idea is down to every level of CCP right now. When last week CCP had a tech show where they were talking about like how they're doing with their hardware and software stuff, like the actual back end of Eve. And I think it was CCP Paradox. I was like, we just decided to turn bounties off just to see what would happen, because that's just like an idea that CCP has had. So you can just see how that concept is just permeating through CCP as a developer right now.
Caleb?
I just think that's awesome. I think it's really the right way to do it.
I know this is meant for you and your type of gameplay, Niden. So you kind of come back at a time where the game is really paying a lot of attention to some of the issues that you might have really cared about. You being a low-sec player, smaller groups, a lot more combat, and that kind of stuff. So, but at the same time, you have this amazing growth, explosive growth in high-sec for mining, because that's where mining is gone, but also for missioning, because there's this whole science fiction Triglavian narrative that's going on, where they basically punched holes in the map and made an entire region. So it's kind of like an underground. So there's a lot going on that years. Okay,
mate. I was looking through all that stuff, but the main thing that I thought was like, it was a lot to get through. But then somebody told me about filaments, and I thought, this is the best idea I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, CCP
really
Rise. And who's the programmer with Rise?
I think CCP Cognac?
No, it's a different programmer. Young ambitious guy. But anyway, those guys came up with it. So Rise is, he's a good theory crafter and developer, especially for people like you, I think. I think you even arm wrestled at FanFest. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, yeah, shit, we did. I forgot about that. God damn it. I so crushed him. It was so good. It was awesome. Yeah. I remember that now. Well, Elise was there. Elise was the witness to this, I think.
I was.
Oh, shoot. Did I blow my source there?
Oh, no. All
right, good. Well, I heard this because this story has to be told in public. So we're going to tell it right now. At least I'll give you a chance to say it. If not, I'll say it real quick.
No, you go for it. You probably have more grandeur. I've got boomer brain. So
All right. So McLean is this giant player, right? He's like 6 feet tall and he's built like a tank. And so, and he's killing everybody, arm wrestling. And so Rise comes up and says, I'll take you on. And Rise, who's a lot smaller, arm wrestles McLean and wins. And it's like, oh my God, Rise is super strong. And then Niden steps up. I think you're even smaller. I'm not sure. And you arm wrestle a CCP Rise and you beat him. And so it really is like, little fish eating the bigger fish. It's very unusual for that to happen. So that was kind of neat.
It was fucking neat. Yeah, I remember about 2 hours after that happened, we got Rise really drunk, and then Eve players tend to find him terrifying because he has all these really weird ideas that scares a lot of people. But I can tell you, after 6 beers, they get really scary. And we were 4 people listening to him, I think, at a table, and we were shaking our boots with all the crazy shit he was coming up with. Like, I'm just going to ruin this, and I'm going to throw this away, and this is shit. We're just going to change all of that, and you lose all this shit. It was so good.
They've given him way too much access to the dials in Eve right now. So he's at work in his laboratory. Doing some stuff. Yeah. And he's an intimidating guy. Even he's intimidating to interview, which is kind of funny. Okay. So
I think he's awesome. He's probably the best. I mean, of all the devs, I really like a lot of the devs, but just getting the Eve that I fell in love with, that I still am in love with for, reasons. He's the guy I think that gets it the most. And that's why I'm really happy that Team Talos not only was created, but still exist and are still doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes, and they're up front in this. They're getting a lot of development. I don't know, backing, I guess is the way to put it. Okay, but this leads to a bigger problem. Boat, I think this is what makes you unhappy with these changes. You're saying, yeah, this is like, Eve's in a worst state ever. Caleb, I want to rope you into this as well. Let's talk about scarcity and how it's going for the players, especially in nullsec.
So I've only been looking at like the last week, but in terms of like how people are responding, CSM members are responding, and the whole overall like CCP plan, and I can understand what CCP is trying to do, but they're doing it one after the other without any positive interjection. So like they're constantly trying to do the scarcity model where they're limiting resources and moving things around, and then change is fine. But then when they add the drone thing and then they add all these like little details, it's like the work, like piling things on to the point of
they just gave us ESS, which is arguably absolutely fantastic.
For small like 1 to 10 man gang groups, yes, because like I see Asher go out and do like little fleets to hit ESSs. But you're not going to have on a grand scale of Eve, over 50 people aren't going to go on an op just to kill or do an ESS, right? Like you're not going to see.
So what's better for Eve Online? Let me just ask you this: what is better for Eve Online? Is it to have 100 or 1,000, 15, 20 man roams going around, or 5 to 10, 50 man roams going around? Like what?
10, 50 man roams.
You think the 5 to 10, 50 man roams automatically going around regions, shutting the smaller roams down, and killing that entire playstyle is good for the game?
So here's how 0-0 works. I don't know about low sec much anymore because I haven't done it in 2-3 years. But in terms of 0-0, 0 is vast. You could take a fleet of 50-man gang. You could travel from Delve, go north through Fountain, up into towards like Branch.
Yeah, and they'll run into nothing because there's nobody else out there.
But the thing is when you have a thriving Eve nullsec economy where you have people out there mining, ratting, and making income in a vast region, you can end up in a situation where let me give you an example. When it's in its heyday of PvE, okay, this is what I used to do. I would literally go, okay, we're gonna go roaming. I would literally fly to Bob Space. And I say this is the heyday because there was a lot of people in 0-0.
Where's Bob?
You would fly to Bob's space. You would fly around in their space for 30 minutes and get 0 content because it took them 30 minutes to form up. And then they'd form up and chase you off and you'd fight, right? And you knew the second you entered their space, they would start forming up and they would defend their space because they wanted to defend their ratters and miners. even like when FCON mattered in the PvE scale when they owned a region, you could at least like you would be able to tackle a Oracle or Super of theirs, and they would form up and defend it. Eve 0-0 now is, I like to think of you can almost think of like a post-apocalyptic movie or a game where, yeah, you'll see a super carrier ratting somewhere, but there's one of two reasons that super carrier is there. Either his alliance doesn't know about it and he's trying to make money in private and secret, or he's out of his damn mind. And so that is so rare outside of bots, or excluding bots where you see like 13 in one system. It's rare because that person in that super carrier knows he's not going to get saved. No one's going to come to his rescue. And because you have that thought process of, hey, if you take your super carrier out, you're going to lose it. That means nobody forms defense gangs, which means that small 20-man roaming gang isn't going to see as many of those as they would have seen in Delve before. They would have seen in test space before. People hate on umbrellas, but umbrellas mean that somebody's dropping supers, somebody's dropping carriers, somebody's choosing ships. I'm sorry?
There's no reason to go out if you're just going to die. If you're going to get a fight that's 50-1, there's no reason to go out. Like,
sure.
Why should I go out if that's the case?
Okay, solo PvP, you're right. But I'm talking about...
Okay, 50-5.
We're talking about the scarcity effect on 0-0, right? And 0-0 is not solo PvP. It's not little 10-man gangs. It's not. Let's be honest. Too much of Eve is clumped up into like little alliances and stuff even before this war. I saw a comment yesterday, and this was absolutely hilarious. Okay? It was a red versus blue gang of like 20 guys, or maybe more. They came into T5ZI through a filament. They started wrecking Horde gate campers. They killed like 20 ships. They were just slaughtering dudes. And a guy in local that was a Horde FC goes, wait, why are you helping the goons? And it's like, no, we're just here to PvP because we came through a filament, dude. Like, what the hell are you smoking? But it's that mentality of either you're with us or against us right now in Eve. But you take that scarcity.
The Imperium doesn't know anything about that.
Well, no, because in the end of the day, it's what, 155,000?
No. We did numbers.
Okay,
it's 2-1. It's a little more than 2-1. But outnumbered for sure.
Let's say it's 2-1. I had a Horde FC yesterday say, guys, we lost to Retaro even though we had 1,300 in local, but we managed to kill 100 destroyers, so we won the fight. What? Anyways, besides that, but here's what scarcity is a problem. When you have scarcity mixed with the fact that 0-0 is so less dense in population, you're not going to get anything. Like, you're going to take that 50-man gang roaming and you're going to kill nothing. You're not going to find shit. Because by the time you go to find that guy that's 30 systems deep in someone's space, he spotted you 30 jumps ago. He is safe. He's in a retire. He's logged. He's gone. Even the 5-minute PvE timer that they added to make it so you could catch carriers if they control queued, because that was when they added that a few years back, that doesn't matter anymore because you'll never get there in time.
All right. We're going to throw everything into this hodgepodge now. We're going to talk about scarcity, but we're also going to talk about politics and your bombing run, of course, that came up. So let's talk about combat, Delve, the war, and scarcity and how it's affecting everything. So everything's on the table here.
I found Razor a couple days ago. That was pretty fun.
They're actually doing all right. You found them before you bombed them, right?
Yeah. So I was trying to bomb like the Eagle fleet, and I pressed the wrong button. And like,
wait, start us out. Where was this, and what were you doing?
So T5ZI had a final timer for a faction Fortizar come out, and so they formed up like, which was kind of small. They only had like 200 carriers and supers, so a small number of those to put drones on it to pause it. Then they had, of course, their subcaps. And I was going to do cormorants till I realized the timer, and we were just kind of dicking around and having fun in cormorants. And then I realized that, they're going to all warp over to this thing. So I had all the cormorants make me like little perches, and we even got 60 bombers, and we were going to blow up the Eagles because 60 bombers can blow up Eagles now, if you know what you're doing. And so when the Eagles warped in, they all warped in a nice ball in a nice, wonderful spot. But my probe results fucked up, and so it took us like 10 extra seconds. So we only killed like 10 Eagles and like 5 Bazzies, right? So we didn't kill the whole fleet. Well, by that point, they saw us bomb, so everybody warps over, except for Razor, because Razor and XIX, I don't know what they were thinking. But one of the old ways to shoot citadels is you would ball up and then you would orbit the thing and keep up a nice transversal and maybe the bomb, maybe you don't get hit as hard, by the Citadel. And so they would orbit. Well, you had the 60-man Razor gang following their FC in a nice little train, but not really thinking for themselves. So I just had the Citadel gunner web the FC, and he just stopped. And their whole fleet bunched up in a nice ball, and then 60 bombers appeared, and every ship.
I heard your timing was impeccable. First, the void bombs came in.
Yeah. So
wiped out.
So you actually time it better now. So nowadays you don't warp, used to be you warp a Dictor first, then the bombers. But now you warp the bombers first. As the void bombers are launched, the Dictor bubble goes up. The void bombs wipe out all their caps, so they can't ADC because hacks don't work without an ADC anymore. And then the bombs hit, and then they just died. And then we tried to do it again on our fourth bombing run. We tried to set up a trap at the station, but for some reason I got uncloaked, and so I wasn't there. So I just told everyone to bomb. And PL warped their Munions into the trap and laid it perfectly flush with where the bombs were going to go. But we had EM bombs instead of shrapnel because they're in Munions. So we would have wiped them all out too. And it was 100 ships, PL and NC. But we had the wrong bomb type, so we only killed everything that wasn't a Munion. And all their Munions were in armor, so it was so close with that many bombers. But yeah, and bombers are king now. You can kill any ship in the game now, except for maybe T3s.
And that's something that you've been experienced with for a long, long time. This is what's interesting to me over the last few days is Imperium has made some really cool victories. Your bombing run was one of them. The guy on the other side of it was super impressed with how well timed it was and how precise it was. Let me get through this. So the thing is, Imperium has had a lot of good things to talk about. Not only did they knock out an iHub that was, being launched inside of a Keepstar system. They reset that one. But they've also, what were some of their victories here? They also killed a Revenant, a Leviathan.
So here's a funny little thing before we get to the Revenant thing, because that's really cool. And I can tell you a cool story about that because I was there. So I was FCing Feroxes the other day because I was bored. And I was like, I'm going to shoot a structure because I'm a teacher. And right now all the teachers are home teaching from home. So I have all this kind of extra time. And it was Thanksgiving break, so teachers get a week off. And so I was doing Feroxes. I was shooting structures. And one of the NCFCs named Blazing Bunny, which I don't know how he became an FC, but he did. He's
he practiced.
He messages me and was like, look, Boat, if your Cerberuses leave, I'll fight your Feroxes. I'll form up. Well, of course, Pittsburgh, he don't like me very much. So he forms. But it takes him an hour. And I started my diet about a month ago. And so I had to go get food. I had to get some chicken. So I was debating between going and getting the chicken and waiting on him to show up. And you laugh, but I'm down 27 pounds, mind you.
This sounds like a Bobby Atlas story.
It gets way better. So I go upstairs to get the chicken because I'm like, this motherfucker's taking an hour. I've already reinforced 2 structures. I'm on my 3rd. My fleet's AFK shooting it. I didn't say anything to my fleet this time because I'm trying to time getting back to my computer before they got there. So I'm upstairs getting chicken, and I was debating if I wanted to turn it into a salad or warm it up and just eat the chicken plain. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to eat the chicken plain. So I threw some mustard on the chicken because mustard doesn't have any calories, right? And I'm on a keto diet. Mm. And so I get downstairs, and it's the second I sit in my chair, the enemy fleet had came out of warp on top of us. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I start telling people orders hey, start burning this direction, start shooting. Well, what the enemy fleet didn't realize is that the Serbs hadn't stood down. They just went next door and got on a Titan, and they weren't smart enough to look at that. So the second we start fighting, 10 bubbles go up, and in come the Serbs, and we just wiped their fleet. But it was the timing was so perfect with me being back with my chicken. If I had turned it into a salad and actually took the time to craft a beautiful salad, I wouldn't have came back to 5 minutes after the fight started, and we would have all been dead.
So I gotta say, I gotta interrupt you for a second. I love this is the classic Boat story, right? It's you take some facts, twist it a little bit, talk about some chicken, but it doesn't matter. It's amazing, it's entertaining, and it's I'm just talking about getting some chicken. Pittsburgh sucks, by the way. Blazing Bunny's a piece of shit. Yes. They take 2 hours to form. Imperium for the win. Chicken, I killed everyone. It's the best story I've ever heard, and you do this every single time.
Okay, so now can I tell you that I'll call it cool. Well, if you like that story, I'll wait till the next one. So, Super Carrier
I was just sort of saying before you get on with that one, like these things don't change. This used to be the classic boat, and it's still boat. Like 2.5 years I come back, it's still the same boat telling the same stories. It's so good.
Sorry.
Tell me what this next story is before you go into it.
It's the supercarrier and Titan kill.
Okay. Before we do that, I do want to set the stage a little bit, right? Last week on the show, we were talking about I think it was last week. It's when all of Pappy moved over to T5Z. The Keepstar went up. It's right next to 1DQ. And we talked about what are the implications of this? What does this mean? What's the worst thing that can happen? And I was very tepid on the move, right? I said, it's a very dangerous place to be next to your enemy, because if you make a mistake, if you get a little bit too hubris, you can really get punished on this. And it makes me feel really good about what happened later in the week, because it backed up exactly what I said, or what we said as a collective group, right? Because it wasn't just me. So it's a very dangerous moment. It's very trepidatious because you're right next to someone. If you make a small mistake, or if you lose focus, hey, we're right next door, we can kick these guys' butt. Obviously mistakes can happen. So we saw a few mistakes this week that completely vindicated me, which makes me very happy personally. And also completely vindicated our points, which doesn't always happen. A lot of times the predictions fall a little bit flat. So I kind of like to make a big deal about it when they actually do come true.
I will say this, T5, you guys moving there is the best thing ever, not gonna lie. Because it doesn't help you strategically. I don't know why. We have this rule in Goons where you don't correct your enemy's dumbs, and T5ZI doesn't really solve or help in a strategic way because of Titan bridges, because you don't have to go through T5. Every time they set up a gate camp, we just use it as an excuse to form a fleet and go kill their gate camp. You kill 20, 30 dudes, then go home. The only people having fun in T5 are the guys that doing little fleets and chemos and bombers. Those are the three fun things outside of this, of course, super carrier kill, which stemmed from the little guys. I'm gonna point this out. So can I tell the story now?
Yeah. Tell us about the Leviathan and Revenant kills.
So the thing is you've heard the phrase "Tangus are here," okay? And this is a famous phrase from a situation a few years back in Delve, where a group of very elite pilots, including Jay Amazingness, were constantly killing this dread that kept dropping on beacons to kill jump freighters. And after the third or fourth time, Pen of Smash and Israd dropped 30, 40, 50 dreads, however many, and they killed a Sancho mothership and a couple of super carriers and a Leviathan, right? And that's kind of what transpired there. In this case, and there's a famous phrase from that, is how stupid is this guy? How many times is he going to get himself killed? That kind of thing. And there's a lot of famous phrases from a guy named Hippo Jax that are involved in that. And a couple
He's in the audience there.
Yeah. And so, oh no, he knows. He hates when it gets brought up. It's really hilarious. But fast forward to just this Turkey Day. Day before Turkey Day, you have a guy, the great Asher, Elias. He sends the broadcast, tells all the goons, "Hey, look, it's 2 days before Turkey Day. Let's not reinforce any structures. Let's let nothing come out on Thanksgiving, because if you hit a structure 2 days later, it comes out. So it's okay, we're not going to do that. We'll leave Turkey Day as a free day." But of course, Test and Horde, they don't follow. They don't want to do that. They want to hit every structure they can. They had 13 strat ups on Thanksgiving, just in a 10-hour period. And they had timed them. It was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. You couldn't even go have fun with your family if you wanted to be a valued member of the Alliance. So moving forward, you had this guy and these two super carriers, and every time people light Sinos, we have a bounty system. You kill a recon with a Sino, you get 100 million ISK. To give you an example, the great Big Bill the Boss has killed over 50 of them himself in YZ9. He is just literally, every time he logs in, he kills 2 or 3 with Thrashers. The thing is that our cowardly enemy, they don't like it when we do it in T5 because they're afraid that we're killing their Sinos. So what they started doing is they had smart bombing ships sitting on Falcons. They had, Titans that were doing it. I think there was a Moloch at one point that did it. But then you had this one man in a poopmobile. I call it the poopmobile, but it's the Sancho mothership. I've lost one, by the way, but that's a different story. different story. But anyway, this guy had the audacity to shoot a guy named Kunmi, and Kunmi is a very driven individual. If you ever think of John Wick, he's like the John Wick of goons. Okay, if he sets his mind to something, he's going to either borrow a couple $100 billion from someone to make it possible and then pay them back a couple weeks later, or he's just going to make it happen. Okay, a lot of the Super and Titan kills the goons have gotten in the last probably year or so have come from this man. Okay, he sets things up, he makes things happen. He's good at this. So he was doing bombers on the undock to kill Sino ships, and he'd constantly do it. But this dang poopmobile kept killing Kunmi, specifically Kunmi. I don't think that's a good idea. So a energetic imposter known as the third imposter scanned the guy's fit and found that he had no tank outside of the active hardeners. And let me be honest, a poopmobile with no tank is like 3 million HP. So Jay Amaziness created the third imposter. And then you had a whole bunch of other things happen. And it was basically like a solid 4 days of, okay, we're going to drop on this guy today. No, let's think it'll work today. Okay, we're going to drop on this guy today. No, ain't going to work today. And then Thanksgiving Day, literally the Turkey Day, it was like, you know what, fuck these guys. They had 13 ops and Turkey Day, let's drop on them today. And so we did. I was the loot guy. Surprise.
Getaway car.
I've literally looted every Super and Titan kill for like the last year. I'm like the dedicated looter, and it never dies because, well, loot ships can always tether. Lol. The Sino ship came from a test guy because he was a nice guy and he lit a Sino for us. It may or may not have been because I asked him to light me a Sino on the station because he thought I was going to jump my Titan in, but that's a different story. He lit us that Sino. We came in, and then we killed him. And then the Leviathan was the icing on the cake because we killed this guy so fast and everything was like so laid out perfectly. We had like Pen of Smash on the Apostle crew, and then we had like the Dreads, and we had too many Dreads, and we had the Hectors sitting in a Citadel waiting to warp in because Tess was nice enough to let us dock in one, things like that. So it was like the perfect scenario to kill this guy. We murder this guy, and then like he dies so fast that we're just like looking around on grid going, okay, fuck, what else can we kill? We're not dead. Like none of us died. The guy gunning to Keepstar never DD'd because he was afraid the DD would bounce to Titans. So he never used it. So you have these Dreads who are not dying. Well, the first 3 or 4 Titans that undocked, and you can hear this in different audio clips. Like if you listen to the audio clips of like of the other side, you can hear their FCs just screaming, undock, DD them, undock, kill them. But there's no organization there. It's not like, hey, join this fleet first. Make sure you have faxes ready. It's just get undock, kill them. So, of course, a test Leviathan pilot does just that. He undocked, he threw his DD, but he only killed one, and that was me. Surprisingly enough, I think he killed me. And then it was like, okay, now what? But the thing is like the way Keepstars are situated is that like the faxes undock out of range. That's why we dropped our apostles like really close so they could rep things like triage, so they could rep the Hectors. So you could alternate like who has tackle because Hectors are broken. And you have these apostles to like rep people. It's really cool. But anyway, so you're killing. So this guy like DDs, but now he's aggressed and he can't tether for 5 minutes and he can't warp off. So this like Hectors just turn to him and like tackle him, and then he just gets eviscerated. And the thing is I was shitting bricks because I couldn't get near him. There was too many Titans to like loot him. So of course, as the looting guy, I couldn't get to that Leviathan. But then he wasn't dying, and we were all having like this like 10 seconds of oh shit. But then we realized it was because he wasn't dying because of tie-dye, which is absolutely hilarious because we thought he was just like all of a sudden getting reps, but no, he just wasn't dying because of tie-dye, and then he eventually died. But we didn't get to loot the wreck, so we had to blow it up. But the best part about all this is I was dual boxing. I was the loot guy, but I was also on my Phoenix that I had just bought like seconds before we dropped because nobody had a free Phoenix lying around. They had all these other great Dreads. So I had to buy my own Phoenix. But I forgot to siege as we jumped in. So if you look at the kill mode for the whatever that thing is, the Poopmobile, I have 0 damage on my Dread, and there's literally faxes and enemy ships with more damage than I did. So I forgot to siege, and I just kind of neuted him and tackled him, and then of course I was like top 10 on the other one. But it was
a good kill at the end of the day. You took out a rep you took out a Leviathan, and you lost dreads on the other side of it.
There are some important aspects to this story that I want to just because I'm from the other side. I'm from the side that got shot. Right? So it's always nice to get a more holistic view of what happened. But before I go, I gotta say I can't believe you didn't let people have dinner with their families on Thanksgiving just to kill a revenant.
It was after
That's so cruel.
That's so cruel, Boat. No, really, if you really, it's real bad, man.
We killed him at midnight Eastern. It was after everyone went to bed from their food comas. It was strategically planned to happen after they did 13 ops.
Unless I'm on the left, unless I'm on the West Coast, Bo. I mean, come on.
No, that's my tactic.
That's when I have seconds. That's the best part of Thanksgiving. Is like, anyways,
I can tell your computer. Just saying.
I just had to shit on you a little bit, but so this is the funny part, right? So this guy isn't a revenant. He's using it quite brazenly, which everyone has told him, "Hey, man, that's pretty dumb. You shouldn't do that." But he does it anyways. Who cares? So he does that. The funniest part of this story to me is there is a spy in Horde named Third Imposter. He's sitting in a devoter. He's just sitting on the Keep Star. Nobody gives him second look.
2 days old.
He's been in Horde. He's like 40 days old. He's been injected, but he's been in Horde for 1 day, right? And so this revenant kills a bomber. He kills, I guess, Kunmi, as Boat was saying, and then instantly this devoter locks him, scrambles him, and then this dread bomb comes in to absolutely kill this poor revenant.
You want to know what's even funnier about that poor revenant is that he died before he was supposed to die. So Kunmi was doing bombers again, and he was shooting things, and that's what got the guy to aggress. But Kunmi honestly thought we were going to go on like the second or third time that Kunmi did things. But the guy piloting Third Imposter was like, "Oh, I tackled him. Let's go." So it was like the guy doing the subcast was like, "Wait a minute, what? We're dropping? What?"
One of my favorite parts to this is that Peanut Smash has now been involved in killing Jay's Revenant, and now he's been involved in killing a PL Revenant. I think Peanut is the most prolific super cap killer. You can put other people up in there too, right? So Frederick Von Hole killing Uniques and Rocket X in his heyday, right?
I've killed 3 of Revenants, by the way. Now
Peanut has killed like 15. You've got nothing on Peanut. Peanut has killed more faction supers, faction everything, and he's actually killed more goon supers than anyone else too. So.
Well, maybe goons, but I kill a lot of goons too. But yeah, so that story, I mean, it's so perfect because there's this joke running around in Goons about balancing the equation. And so there's a guy that keeps track of T5I's or ZI's like battle report for like the time from the guy, like time you guys moved in till now. And Goons are actually up like 160 billion, even with like the faction loss and the Sotio. And so like the joke when I did the bombing run on Razor was I was trying to balance out the faction Citadel loss. So we killed 23 billion and lost 36. So the balance was still pretty good considering we didn't even form up. So
almost there. But look, there was, I mean, the point is you had some things to talk about that were actually pretty good for the Imperium this week. I was prepared to hear and to talk a lot about Imperium. But then I was watching and I haven't seen it all yet. I just watched a Merkel Chin's rant that got pointed out to me and stuff. And it seemed like the show was mostly about, and the fireside was like complaining. I mean, they call us crying in stations, but I was watching the meta show thinking like, we don't complain like that. Like they're complaining.
Wait, I don't watch the meta show.
Complaining about the state of the economy, the fact.
I mean, they're not wrong though. Like, so normally you post a Reddit thread complaining about something, and like the Merkel Chen one, and normally it doesn't get but maybe 10 votes. It's like at 500 now, and like there's this unanimous agreement of, yeah, we see that this channel is like propaganda, but we totally agree with what you're saying because, well, they're just being honest.
I will say about that, Red, that there are some points that rang quite true, right? And I don't want to get off subject and take this on too early. So Matterall, stop me if I'm about to. There are some things that Merkel Chan talked about that rang really true, right? There's just so many sticks, and it feels like there are no carrots. But one thing that becomes abundantly clear the more you talk to people, especially on this show, like this dynamic is perfectly great. As Boat is saying, PvE sucks. You have Hateless like squirming in his chair, ready to jump out and counter him. There are very distinct playstyles, very distinct versions of Eve that people have been, I think, up until now, completely unaware of. It's so easy to get sucked into your little corner and say, this is Eve. I do everything that is Eve, and just completely miss someone like Hateless, someone like Suitonia, someone like Baleful, who have a completely different version of the game that they play, right? You ask a question, what is objectively better? 50 20-man fleets, or 50 10-man fleets, or 5 50-man fleets? You have both people from both side and Hateless side having completely, like, just equally passionate responses to the other side, right? As these patches hit, it feels like the institutional knowledge from older players like Boat and I, and long-standing empires, it's becoming more and more worthless, right? So it's not just get in a Drake, get in an Ishtar, get in a Myrmidon, and go rat. There are completely other ways to make tons of money in this game, right? You can make very good money in the Abyss, which, like, it's something that Boat had mentioned that Path of Exile has, that in his view, Eve didn't have, where people would just spend tons of money on this one ship to unlock, like, this high-end content. And that happens, right? Like, there are T6 Abyssal runners that throw gigatons of money in their ship to run these things super fast. Like, I know my Vagabond is like 5 bill, and I run T6, and I make 500 mil an hour. It's engaging. It's not formulaic. You have to figure out which one you're going to do each time. It exists, right? There are some guys on Reddit that post how they're making 900 mil an hour triple boxing T5s and T6s in the frigates.
200 million as frigates. It's difficult to do, but it's fun. It is absolutely fun.
You can watch people like Lokival the Nub, who's probably one of the best content creators out there doing this. He will run Nurgles and Firestorms. He runs 3 of them at a time, which obviously we're talking about really, really high end here. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone could be expected to do it, but he makes it look so easy. And it's able to. This is something that you could do with like your friends, right? So it's just, there are some parts that he speaks about that ring true, but I think there are parts of the game that he's missing out on because he just isn't aware, because they're new, they're not really talked about. It's not what people did back in the day. It's not what, like, the institution that he's in is aware of or has used before. It's not using a bunch of oracles. It's not super carrier ratting. It's something completely weird and different. But it feels like that's where Eve is going. And I'll stop right now, so because Cloud has something to say.
So I completely agree with your points there, Elise. The only issue, and I think the thing that maybe you might be missing, sorry about that, is a lot of nullsec's kind of perspective on, like, or Sov nullsec's perspective on this specifically, is to do with like how our PvE enriches the sovereignty, the sovereign systems that we spend time building up and defending as well. And as much as, you know, Abyssal PvE is fantastic, and it is fantastic, it's not specifically related to Sov nullsec, and it doesn't, you know, like, our corporations and our alliances don't get enriched by that PvE occurring, because you can do that PvE in any space whatsoever, and it doesn't mean that, like, it's that you know, holding space enriches you by being able to do this. You know,
no, I completely get that point, right? So the idea here is, if you are a nullsec empire, you've been hit over the face with a bat repeatedly.
Ouch.
And that is absolutely true, right? Like, part of that is the pendulum has to swing the other way. I think it's swinging a little bit too hard, a little bit too fast. I think there's like a little G-force there that people probably weren't prepared for. So that part of Merkel Chan's point rings very true. And I think the Mittani had something about this, saying that the CCB hates the large null blocks. I think if you talk to CCB Rattati and CCB Psych, he'll say, yeah, we hate what they're doing. They broke what we thought was fine. They always break it. We hate them.
Here.
Bring Caleb or Niden in. who was that? Oh, anyway, Caleb, what do you think of this line of talking? And
it's always funny. It's just that the point is that there's some valid points of criticism, because I was expecting that CCP actually got around to fixing the things that they promised to fix. And the only thing that I've seen that is in the direction of fixing anything is by separating and creating the differences between high sec, null, and low sec. That's the only thing that's really been done. That is what the doctor ordered. Everything else is just turning off the faucets. And I don't think that blanket poverty helps anyone in this game.
I don't agree at all. I think poverty is great. I think people have way too much fucking money and too many fucking ships and too big empires. Anything that splits that up is good for Eve.
See, here's what they need.
That's wrong. If you're turning off the faucets, the rich remain richer. So it's fundamentally the other way around if you wanted to actually stimulate the economy and create more diversity and, quote unquote, equality. If you're turning off the faucets, the people that win are the rich people. This is why in real life, when you get austerity, that's a right-wing policy, because it makes the rich people richer, whereas stimulus and actually inflation makes rich people poorer.
Here's something you could do. Merkel kind of hinted to this. Hold on, you'll like this. I think you'll all agree with this. This is a good thing. So Merkel hinted to this, but he didn't really go into detail. Okay, what other games have that Eve has an opportunity to exploit is games like the parent company of Eve Online, Black Desert Online, or Path of Exile, or any of these games where you have the opportunity to get this really, really, really extremely rare, expensive item for very marginal gains, 5-10%. But where Eve has a chance to exploit that expensive rarity thing is that it can blow up and die and be gone forever. So the ultra rich, for example, a guy like Merkel who has more money than he'll ever spend, even if he tried to, could then take 10, 15, 20 billion, put it into something that's ultra expensive, that gives very marginal gain, that could be like a way to show off. It doesn't really affect the overall gameplay of everyone involved, but it's a way to burn through that money. And a lot of like the ultra rich that have this kind of money to burn are looking for that in Eve, and it's just not there outside of a few officer mods. But those are so rare. Like one thing Merkel pointed out was CCP had actually talked about taking 5 Titans, smashing them together. And
that was a joke.
It may be a joke, but it's actually a great idea, because imagine if you could take, like, and they do this in BDO, where you take your pets, and when you mash them together, there's a chance of either getting a tier 2 pet, a tier 3 pet, or a tier 4 pet, right? And each one's different. It's a form of gambling. The same thing when you level up gear in that game. You're gambling if it'll go higher or not based on a percentage. If you could do that in Eve, where you could take 2 Leviathans, smash them together, and you have either a chance of getting just 1 Leviathan or getting a Leviathan 2.0 that has 10% more damage or uses 10% less fuel. That would be cool.
But this isn't Pokemon. Like, that would have to, I mean, all right, maybe if they trap it.
But modern games are doing that. Games like BDO, games like Path of Exile, games like WoW, they're doing that because it attracts the people with the money.
We have mutaplasmoids that you can apply to just about every single module and get those gains that you're talking about, risking your module in the exact same way that you're talking about. It already exists in the game.
But modules aren't spaceships, and spaceships is what drive content. Like, faction ships are too expensive for what they do, right? They're 50, 60, 70, 100 billion for practically no gain. Look at that faction.
You're looking completely at capital. So like you're looking at Vanquishers and Moloch. I'm thinking subcaps. Like Vigilantes are really useful. They got really good webs. They're a little squishy, but they got really good webs. The Phantasm has an excellent wall right now.
But you want a Vigilant
really good.
Where you can smash 2 Vigilants together.
Why do we need to raise the ceiling? Like, why do we need a creep?
Because I want
a power creep.
I want power creep in like solo PvP. That's my
power creep is terrible.
I like taking a Tengu that does 1600 DPS that costs 3 billion ISK and a 2 billion ISK in implants, goes insanely fast, doesn't require cap mods because you don't need cap boosters. I can roam around Eve doing 1500 DPS heated, and go really fast. And if it dies, whoa, I just lost it. Now, if I had the option to make Tengu 2.0 that does 2,500 DPS, goes marginally faster, but costs twice as much, fuck yes, I'm going to do that. Because that's where my money would go. And I think that's what the game needs.
I got where you're going. But the thing that we were hearing was there was a lot of anger towards CCP for too much, really cutting back the gameplay of the empires, for instance, and too much so. Like there's not enough relief yet. Right now it's just austerity, and that was what the gist of it was, right?
Yeah, I think that's where it rings true to me the most, especially as Maccloud mentioned in the nullsec empires, right? We know the pendulum has to swing back. It was out of whack for too long, but we were promised carrots, and we've just been getting stick and stick and stick and stick after stick, and it just feels a little bit weird. I will say, because I can't let this go too much, because the one thing that kind of rings like bullshit to me is a little bit what Boat was talking about, how the giga wealthy are just looking for ways to spend their money. You know, there are mutaplasmids. You can roll mods that'll give you 10% more, right? You can spend billions to get that 10%. People don't necessarily do it. Well, you can mutaplasmid all the mods on your Tengu Boat, and you get the same 10%.
Look, Boat, if Merkel Chen wants a place to put all his money because he's so wealthy, he should buy war bonds from the Imperium.
So here's here's what the ultra rich do. I mean, like, look at Aerith, for example. Aerith will just manipulate markets, and he'll make poor guys suffer more while he gains another trillion-esque. And that's what Aerith did for a very long time when he was playing very, very actively, is that he would just multiply his wealth exponentially, and that was his way of doing it. And you have guys who, for example, there's this guy right now flying a Moloch, who he's lost 3 Vanquishers, he's flown a Moloch, and I've seen him fly a faction dread that's worth like 100 billion. So there's guys that do that. But I'm just saying, from my own personal perspective, if I could take a mutaplasmid and attach that thing to a Tengu and get a Tengu that has all these modified stats, that's a 1 of 1. Think about it like that. This is what they've gotten away from with the downfall of the Alliance tournament. They've gotten away from 1 of 1s. And that tends to be, if you watch, like, I watch a lot of YouTube in my free time as a teacher, and one of the things I watch is like shows that talk about unique things, like guys that collect unique things. And a lot of like ultra wealthy, they want 1 of 1 things. That's like their big thing. Yeah. When you've got $1 billion, you want a 1 of 1.
That's what the hypernet store is built for, those kinds of things.
That's what I want from a spaceship. I don't care about the mods, because you're not going to see mods. But we have a channel for that. CCP, please put your suggestions in there.
And you're arguing for the same type of power creep that exists in other games. Even Villy is pointing this out to you.
That's what we need, though.
But no, that's exactly what we don't need, because we've basically almost broken the game with this quality of life era. And if we bring in things like RPG, power creep bullshit from World of Warcraft, we're going to get this end level stuff, and there's nothing else, and we have to wait every single time for CCP to create a new tier. This is bullshit. This would completely undermine what makes EVE Online unique. It would kill the game.
It would not, though, in a way, because you have to think of it like this. In the grand scale, thousands versus thousands, you don't see 1 of 1s in those fights, because they just get targeted first and they die. Where you see 1 of 1s is solo PvPs, very, very small game PvP. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really affect EVE. But it'll take a guy like me and make me want to play a little bit more. Because that's the thing, is like when you get to the point where you've played the game at least 3 years, and I say 3 years is the average of a player who really sticks it out, they lose interest, and they have to invent new ways to come up with that interest. And that's the thing for me, is even though with COVID going on, I'm home, my interest in EVE the last month has literally been, okay, what unique thing can I do to the enemy? And it doesn't matter if it's flying cormorants into a keep star that's going to get blown up and maybe they kill a frigate. That sounds really insane, but that's the unique thing that appeases me about the game at the moment. And that's why I think the power creep is nice, because it's not going to affect the game on a grand scale of things. It's not. It may make people want to hunt more things. Like there's this guy that hunts unique ships. It's literally what he does. He builds characters, he designs characters with the specific purpose of using that character as bait to then hunt that unique thing to death. And his kill board is nothing but like ultra expensive, rare things that he's killed, and the way he kills it. And he never talks about how he does it. He just does it. And then you try to ask him, and he's very secretive about it. But he's very smug about it too at the same time. It's really cool.
All right.
That's what we need.
I think the important thing about this discussion, and I want to roll it back to something that Suitonia was pointing out, because he was basically stealing my thunder a little bit. He was talking about how some of these changes recently from CCP is going to disincentivize things like multi-boxing. It's going to push Plex prices down and let more new players and new blood come in. And I think if these are some of the things that CCP are trying to do, they're definitely moving in a direction of health for the game. The only thing that I really have an issue with right now is the whole austerity topic, because austerity as it is right now, it is skewing the whole playing field in the benefit of the rich people and the very powerful people. And ironically, we should have done the opposite. And I had expected that CCP would have done something that was more equivalent to a stimulus and an inflationary thing, but moving it on to things like moon mining and fixing the location of the faucets to make them dynamic and create this interdependencies. But we haven't seen that. The only thing that we've seen that is something that the doctor ordered is actually the diversification between high sec, low sec, and null sec. But that has been done in a way that's basically strangling the economy. And bringing in something as gimmicky as this tax break on the market is just, it's a complete immersion breaker. It's a horrible idea. The only thing that could defend this whole concept is if it's to do something to test what the impact is of taxation on the market. But there's not enough current market dudes around to care about that and to give that data any meaning. So CCP is doing something that is fundamentally dumb when it comes to that tax break.
Suitonia, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I mean, I'm sure it sounds reasonable to me, right? Like what Caleb's saying.
So one of the things, right, that I think CCP, and this is me projecting into CCP to see how they view the game. So this might be horribly wrong, and I don't mean to read into what they're doing anything. But so what they have put an emphasis on is what Caleb had said, is to differentiate the types of space and to create interdependencies. The problem with Eve for the last 4 years has been kind of exactly what Boat's wanting more of, right? So he wants these power creep. This is kind of how we got to this spot. Everyone and their mom has a Titan right now in the war that we're in. There's thousands of them. It makes them impossible to balance. It's kind of not fun. If you roam through them, you get bosuned in the face. Whatever. I think that issue is probably why we got to the place we're at. But for the longest time, it was, oh, do you want to make money? You could do cool stuff in Empire. You could do cool stuff in low sec. But really where it outshines is nullsec. So you might as well come out to nullsec. People who had no aspirations to create an empire or do anything cool in nullsec, they just want to be a dude who makes money. Got sucked into the nullsec gameplay, completely skipped over high sec, completely skipped over low sec, because frankly, it made no sense to do any of that stuff. You always made the best money in nullsec, right? So they're trying to reverse course on that a little bit to say, hey, you can make money here doing this. You have to make money here doing this to help out the people making money here doing this. So from my perspective, they just want to stop people flocking to nullsec, and they want the people out there to be vicious, like people who want to create little empires, not to be people who want to create little empires and also the place to be to make all the money, right? So they want to grab those people out who want to make money because they don't really belong in nullsec anyways, and they want to sprinkle them all over the place.
I think that's...
But at least the spice still has to flow. There still has to be stuff coming into the game so we can actually play. The problem with things like vertical farming, which was what we got with anomalies that could be infinitely recycled. So you basically had an infinite source and a faucet that could just scale to like crazy levels, right? The problem with that was that with the umbrella, and the fact that nothing is assailable in the case of anomalies, there was nothing really stopping that faucet. If that same availability of materials was moved onto actual moon mining platforms, so we got back to the income levels that we used to have with passive moons, but where it suddenly is something assailable like it was back then. This is exactly what I expected CCP to do, because they launched moons at a ridiculously low value, with no agency, with no differentiation, and in a really, really dumb place. This is what we need to become the core of the nullsec economy, but it needs to be something that your neighbor can harass and destroy and attack, right? Both when the fleets are out there working those fields and when they're waiting for the next frag. We need that assailability. We need that conflict driver that we in a way that's 10 times better than old school AFK moons, right? Because this would be something that could create a ton of content. But of course, someone like Boat will say, well, structured balance is shit. Yeah, but they need to fix that as well.
I will say, Caleb, real quick, Boat, and I'll let you go after this because I'm sure you're wiggling. But yes. I think there is more to come, which is what CCP have said every single time. Like, you were on the scarcity panel talking about them. They keep hammering this home. There's more to come, guys. There's more to come. Don't worry. We just have to get this rained under control. But one of the things that you're talking about in terms of kind of like the old moon mineral system, right? It seems like there are possibilities for the ESS and the reserve bank to fill that role, something that's assailable. We have no idea how that's going to play. And as it comes right now, these reserves banks are getting fat with a pH, right? There are some all over the place with upwards of 4, 5, 6 billion ISK in the reserve bank. And this has only been going on a few weeks. So maybe that's part of the answer as well.
Yeah, I hope they really consider putting them into the sovereignty design. I think ESS should have some sort of impact from sovereignty. So you actually get some sort of taxation that goes directly to the subholder of the systems, because there's a lot of need for entities in null to have useful and streamlined economies, and something like a sovereignty-based tax could easily go onto the ESS. It would not require that much work.
Let's talk about this a second. There's individual wealth, and then there's like entity wealth, right? And this is a problem that's the Imperium of all groups is running into right now. They've actually established war bonds, which means transfer your personal wealth to state wealth so that we can fight this war.
It's not that we need the state wealth as much as it's the more. I can think of it like this:
we're asking for loans, but we don't need money. Like this is fantastic. Tell me more.
Let me explain what I mean. Is you're in a war right now. It's the first war in EVE's history where every single ship on both sides is free to the member base. The level of reimbursement coming out of each side right now is being pulled from those stockpiles that people have talked about, right? You're not seeing personal wealth get used. You're seeing alliance level reimbursement funds in the trillions a month getting used. And so what we're saying to people is the same thing a lot of alliances have been doing, like Brave and such, is look, you guys may have trillions on your own or even billions. And it's, do you want to throw that billions into the war effort now, knowing that you're not going to be using your own wealth for the next 2, 3, 4 months? Or do you want to just hold on to that money and then eventually you're going to have to pull into that piggy bank sometime, right? And that's the thing now. Like, for example, when I did that dread bomb, every single one of those dreads was instantly reimbursed by the Alliance, plus the loot that I looted that was like 40, 50 billion worth of stuff. That got turned into more funds for doing it again next time. And so you end up in that situation where I think it's better to spend Alliance wealth and have the money directed in a certain way. I think one of the programs we did at the beginning of the war that actually had a huge impact too is, and I loosely know about this, is that people were like taking in giant chunks of money to one group, and then that one group would build doctrine ships and then put them up there for insanely cheap. And then those doctrine ships would be reimbursed in such a way that the people were making money if they died. So in that sense, there's no real need for individual wealth. It's almost like a socialist view of things where like, hey, give the state your money. We're going to turn it into what you need to fight this war. And then we're going to make that war free. And I used to.
But that's prioritizing their decisions, right? You're taking their money, prioritizing their gameplay.
And when you're in a war like this, it kind of both sides feel like they have to do that. That's the reason like Test takes instead. Here's an example: the TTT station. Test gets the money and then divvies it out in the form of reimbursement and ships to the other groups in the Test like coalition, right? Yeah. They don't trust those little groups with the money. So they give them ships and reimbursement, and that's
nobody's complaining about that except the Imperium. Like Brave isn't complaining about that.
No one really complains about on the Imperium side either when they do like the war bonds thing. It's just like, oh hey, you have extra money, throw it at the Imperium, get back later. But
but it's not that. It's a sign of things, right? We're fighting a war of attrition, and now the state is asking for war bonds.
But But everyone,
not everybody does that. No, this is the first time I've ever heard that.
Okay, happen. Well. So here's an interesting thing to go back a second to what you're saying about scarcity.
Yeah.
Eve has had a conflicting narrative on how they want to drive the game for about 8 or 9 years now. And it was back a while back where I guess Eve was the sole owner of their own company in a way, where the narrative was, and the lead development team was going of the idea of, we want these autonomous groups who don't have to rely on HiSec or a specific place in order to survive and thrive. Move out to 0-0, bring your buddies, and you can be something, even if you're a small group or a huge group. And that's when anomalies came in, and that's when this idea of self-sustaining 0-0. Goons took that to an astronomical level, to the point where people were importing from Jita just to make more stuff here, but nothing left Delve, right? Nothing was exported. They were just like probably 30% not leaving Delve, right? Like this shit just never hit Jita because it didn't need to, because they had that self-sustainability. And even so, the War Machine was spending so much that Jita was used to augment that, because there just wasn't enough to even,
right, but where'd all that go? Like that's what I'm saying is that was the myth.
So here's an example. This time last year, Goons averaged about 200 billion in reimbursements. I think we're hitting $1 trillion a month right now. That's insanely high. I don't think you understand. If I would have said 10 years ago to Darius Johnson, hey, I'm going to need about $1 trillion ISK just this month to fight Bob, he would have probably told me, get the fuck out. Like, 100 billion just 5 years ago in reimbursement a month, you'd have Atram sweating bullets going, oh fuck, I'm going to get screamed at. And he would, because he's the guy that handles the numbers for reimbursement. So you just don't, the numbers are astronomically high because the game is just burning through so much. But an interesting thing too is it's not really. So you say, okay, you could say, okay, we're doing through $1 trillion, but just imagine if there was no heavy assault cruisers. Like if that wasn't the meta, if the meta was battleships, or the meta was something more or less mobile,
less expensive. Yeah.
No, not even expensive, because here's what happens: is you have T2.
Hold on, I feel like you're tangling me all up, and I don't really know where it's going. But I want to put the same question to Elise, because one of the things that he said early on in this war was, look, one of the things that the Imperium can do is say, yeah, we're spending a lot of money to kill these keep stars that you're putting in, but we can do this all day long. And I'm wondering, do you still feel that way? Like, can the Imperium still do this all day long if they're asking for war bonds? Because this seems like a very significant shift in my mind about what's going on in this war.
I do think that there's probably a lot being made about the war bonds thing, right? I'm sure that the Imperium still has a huge stockpile, but this goes into the Pappy strategy as it's been all around, right? The Anaconda thing, where you want to strangle around Delve, make income generating harder, which accomplished, right? You guys are stuck to 2 constellations. And at the same time, they want to burn through the stockpiles. So, you lose 400 bill worth of caps in your staging system. That's not a good look for the Pappy people, right? But at the same time, you see the Imperium with the first parts of sweat on their brow when they're looking at having to start reimbursing things at $1 trillion a month, right? $1 trillion a month is the figure that I'm sure Villy just is ear to ear smiles about, because that's part of their objectives. Whether or not you argue that that's the path to victory, that's a completely different argument, right? If you say Villy's path to victory is dumb and that's not it, you can talk about that to your blue in the face. But for his stated goals, or rather for the Pappy stated goals, because it's not Villy, we throw it all on him a lot of the time, even though he's not
Right.
the
It's a
one.
lot of leaders. Yeah.
Right. So
I would say it is all Villy though, because you
it's
watch,
definitely
like,
not.
No,
It's
because
definitely
let
not.
me give you an example. You watch a structure die, Villy's the man looting it. You watch a structure go down, Villy's
Well,
the man.
he's the loot guy. He's the bad
number
guy,
one-
like you are.
I'm saying
So
is
first of all, but that's totally categorically wrong, right?
No,
leaving it
I
out.
watched. Okay, watch T5ZI. Every time a structure was dropped in T5ZI that belonged to test, it was done by Villy. Every time a structure was looted after it died, like with a freighter or jump freighter, or not jump freighter, a freighter or a Rorqual, it was done by Villy himself. Villy
No, it's
himself
not.
lost the freighter.
I'm
doing just
this
that.
too.
I
Right?
was talking to him when he did it,
bring me
too. It looks
in.
I know, it was great. He actually lost the freighter.
Go ahead, Elise. Wait, let Elise finish.
So it's not Villy isn't in there hovering up every single Citadel wreck, right? Like that
Here we
doesn't
go. Okay,
happen.
war bonds. Okay, so I got some
You're leaving out the important thing about war bonds. It's
Okay, hold on.
It's
Yeah,
weapon ISK, and that ISK is going to be impacting things like
I was wrong because I had no idea what war bonds were, and I was just making shit up. But I just got clarified. War bonds are not for SRP. War bonds were a one-off deal to buy 1,000 cores.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right?
It's still money you need. I mean,
Here's an important distinction that we have to talk about, right? Why the war bonds might be required, right? The Imperium has been relying on this preponderance of structures in their space, saying, ha ha ha, you have to clear through all of these. It became their narrative for some time. Like, oh, you had a hard time on this timer. Yeah. There's 150 more timers plus
the doomsday timer. The doomsday clock, they call it, yeah.
Yeah. So now coming in January, the clock is getting closer and closer, where these citadels will need a quantum core in order to be back in full power. Here's what happens if you don't put a quantum core in them. And this is something that I think will take people by surprise, even though we've had a lot of notice on this. If you don't put the quantum core in, it goes to low power. If it stays in low power for 6 days, it becomes abandoned. It loses almost all of its health. There are no timers. Everything in there drops to be looted. It's huge. You cannot let this happen if you're the Imperium. You have, 2,000 structures? You have to put a core in every single one of them. Otherwise, your members begin to lose their stuff. And not only do they lose their stuff, they lose their stuff to the enemy. So it's like a double whammy.
Or to goons that like go kill their own structures, which is happening.
So I just want to mention just something that's very important to this whole war thing. Is it doesn't matter how much the goons have. It doesn't matter how much the players have. It matters the materials that they have to be able to put up at the war front, regardless of if they're being reimbursed for it, ISK or not. They need the materials to build the ships. They need the ships to fight the war. If one side runs out of materials, they're going to lose. End of story. It doesn't matter how much they have.
Yes and
it's
no.
all about the materials that they have.
No,
you run out of materials, you're dead. It's over.
You'll never run out of materials.
You can't fight.
Away.
You can't fight if you don't have materials to fight with.
Let me add the core thing. So this person, a logistics person, says, and I quote, "We would have probably done the warbond thing for the cores anyway, regardless of war, because there's just so many of them." Yeah. It's the same thing we did when the iHub change happened, where we had to source like 200 iHubs and redo a whole bunch of iHub stuff. We just outsourced it to every available person. And it's true. The same thing with our keep stars. 64 keep stars. I would say about half of those are either player donated or player built, just on wealth. So it's not like a lot of the Imperium infrastructure is state driven, I guess. So in that sense, that's where that comes from.
Okay. And one more thing, just so people get a sense of scope, right, for what that means. You talk about 64 keep stars. We're going to just pretend that you have 64 keep stars. They're going to stay up in January. You have no other citadels. That is a shock to the Goon financial wallet, rather to the Imperium financial wallet of 2 trillion ISK. And that 2 trillion ISK can get sent over to the other side as well, right? So it's effectively 4 trillion ISK if you think about it that way, because the people that kill it will get a 30 bill little core for each one they kill, and there's 64 of them. So this is a huge, significant amount of money. So as people make a lot about the war bonds, I think it's important to stay a little bit focused, right? I don't think the implication is the Imperium is running out of money, ha ha ha. It's they're about to take this massive shock to the system, And the current state that EVE is, as Caleb has mentioned, the rich can make so much more money than everyone else when they have that money at hand, right? So if I were in the Imperium, I would definitely buy a war bond, right? Because I know I'm going to get my money back.
Do this, right? Fraternity, Test, all these people that own chunks and chunks and chunks of solve with structures. Like you fly around test space, they still don't have cores in most of their keep stars that I've seen.
It's dumb to put a core in right before it's required. It's completely dumb to put in until it's absolutely required.
Maybe not in, but like you're seeing a lot of people talking about it now, where it's starting to hit people's discussions because it's December's here, and it's like, hey, we've got to get these cores, and they haven't really thought about okay, how much that's going to cost. Like you said, trillions and trillions of ISK, and you say, okay, so to answer the comment about, well, it's whoever runs out of ore first. The thing is, this war is interesting. And there's an interesting thing that no one's talked about. And it's good. I want to segue here to the fraternity negative trillion ISK wallet thing.
Before you do that, can we just point out that when it comes to cores, that is not market PvP. It's not in-game economy. It's a big sink. And Dunk has pointed this out way back when it was introduced. So the fact that you have this massive cost of things that need to go in structures right now, it's basically a forced taxation on structures, right?
It doesn't sink. No, you capture it. It's 100% drop.
It goes to CCP.
Well, yeah, but the ISK that is spent on it.
I'll let Caleb finish, please.
All the money that is going into cores are going to be sunk out of the game. So they will not be in the hands of another entity. This is not economy PvP. It's PvE. So all that money goes into those structures where they can then be stolen and then be sold back to CCP. The point is that it's a liquidity problem when we're talking about what would be happening in Delve right now. It's not a wealth problem. There's plenty of wealth, but you can't liquidate that much of your assets easily during a war. So you doing something like the war bond is actually really brilliant because then you can skip past all this and you can instantly get the liquidity you need to actually install and upgrade these things.
I'm sorry.
So just real quickly, just a little clarification in terms of factual accuracy. In the update to the cores coming in December, the cores, the structures that require cores won't actually go into low power mode. If they don't have the cores, apparently, I'll just quickly pull this up.
Yeah, it won't do that till like February or something like that, but then it will.
January 12th. I think January 12th.
Here's
so there's a long period of time there.
So an interesting dynamic in this war is fraternity. Not a lot of people talk about fraternity because they're considered a small alliance. But fraternity does things on a scale that even goons did not do. For example, I went to one system in fraternity space a couple months back, and there were 18 super carriers in one system.
Hold on. Before you go down this route,
sorry.
The whole negative wallet thing, like, I haven't confirmed any of that. Oh, okay.
The negative wallet thing is real. It's been like that for a while. The question is if CCP will do something about it. That screenshot is actually, it's not news as in like it happened to yesterday or whatever. It's actually happened, I think, about a month or two ago. But nothing's really changed.
Before people go running out that TIS said this or that, I don't want to.
No, you don't have to. I'll say it. It's real, but it's just old. And the thing is, usually when people go neg wallet, CCP puts this like thing in place where they're like, look, you have so many X amounts of time to fix this, or we'll just like lock your account out. Like, you need to fix this. It needs to happen. Well, they haven't done that yet with fraternity. It's kind of weird because there's a trillion ISK. But anyway, moving forward, the dynamic in this war that's interesting is fraternity. Fraternity hates test. Fraternity also hates a part of goons, the Chinese goons that we have.
Working with test at the moment.
Well, yeah, but I'll get to that. So right. they don't like test. They hate test. They have this like forever war. I mean, even before the war started, Norris in his broadcast of "we're going to war with goons," he even put a whole paragraph that said, "But we haven't forgotten about test. They'll get their time." Right? He made that very clear when he announced the war. To him, killing goons off would make going after test much easier later. And so a lot of people have speculated, but I mean, I've seen logs of this, so I can say it's true because the logs I see tend to be about 100% accurate. Where Norris has discussed with people like, hey, we're not going to hit test for like X amount of time. We'll give test the opportunity to do what they got to do versus goons. But when the time comes, we're going to kill test. The thing is that FRT is making an absurd amount of money, irrespective of that negative 1 trillion. they are making hundreds of billions a day just off taxes from either ratting or mining or whatever. Because you'll go to their space, you'll see 60 or 70 super carriers going non-stop. Now, do some of those get banned for botting? I don't care, because I'm not a person that condones banning bots, because there's a lot of false positives, but we'll get to that later. If we do get to it. Yeah, there's a lot of false positives with botting. Like a guy got banned once that wasn't even playing the game for like a month, and his Titan got dragged into space because of a false positive, and he hadn't played the game in like a month. It was pretty funny, and he lost his avatar. It was great.
All right.
But anyway, Fraternity is making a shitload of money, and Fraternity literally at one point just a couple weeks ago put all the reserve Titans and supers and took them home. They're like, we don't even need them anymore. We're not really fighting much in this war outside of downtime, a few fun ops. The war is far enough away from Fraternity in terms of time zones, you know, 0200 Eve, 0100 Eve, that they are not as heavy invested as they were at the start of the war. So all they have here is, okay, what they have, and then their subcaps in terms of Titans and Supers, because they pulled the extras home. They did that, I think, just a couple weeks ago. So Fraternity's not really investing a lot of money in this. And at the end of it all, if goons fall, Test still is gone. They're just dead, because if you watch the numbers of who's showing up, you're seeing Horde fooling 800, 900 people on strat ops, and Test and allies are getting like 600 total. And that's among the whole Test inner circle of alliances, Brave and all that. So I don't see Test long for this world, no matter how the war ends, just simply for that reason. Because
I will say just a few things.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
This is exactly this is the idea that the Imperium have, right? If you look at the numbers, Fraternity is the 5th most active alliance in the game in terms of kills. Not in terms of making money. They're number 1 in terms of making money. They're making Delve bucks kind of money right now. It's absolutely insane. But this is a lot of the Imperium strategy boils down to Test is next, which is always fun to hear, because who knows if there's truth to it, but it doesn't matter. And that the coalition attack of the Imperium is wobbly and shaky, right? So it is really interesting to hear from Boat, who he's not pushing an agenda here, right? This isn't Boat trying to spin to everyone. This is just Boat, and this is probably a lot of how the Imperium members view it. So it's a really nice.
I don't even know if Imperium members view it this way. I speak for because I, as a teacher, I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm playing Eve now in between, but there's 2 really well-known goons, Ares Bar and Alice Homeliz. I can't remember his last character name, but anyway, but Alice and Ares, and they are 2 famous and infamous FCs from Serenity, and they were part of Serenity's biggest Titan fight, and they were FCs at the time, and they're pretty the well-known goon Chinese players, and they know a lot about the state of the Chinese internal struggles and different fights and stuff. And they still see Norris hates Chinese goons because it's that half of Eve that pushed him out of Serenity, right? We have a good half of those.
He says he's never played on Serenity, so
who?
Noros has never played on Serenity.
Okay,
but before
you could say that, but anyway, the point is,
all right, go ahead, finish real quick.
You end up in a situation where he can say he never played Serenity, but I know people who have played against him on Serenity, and his own Alliance members said he's played on Serenity. But whatever.
Right, well,
says what he wants.
Just saying what he said.
But when the war is over, right? Let's say goons survive or goons don't survive. It really doesn't fucking matter, right? At the end of the day, goons out of the equation. There's still 155,000 people who have this very fragile love-hate relationship for each other, right? Think about the last time Test was invaded, the great Titan snafu that PL had.
All right. I know you're just trying to put stuff out there, and it's very entertaining. But here, let me go back to something Elise said real quick, and that is that Fraternity's making a ton of money, Delve bucks, right? Well, they have been, according to Noros, they have been nerfed so hard, they're now down to 50% of what they were making before in Oasa, right? A little less in other regions and stuff. I haven't heard a lot of austerity complaining coming from them particularly. They might be, but maybe it's not being interpreted to me.
So think about this though, with their space. Think about it.
Let me throw it to Hateless there, has been waving his hand in the air. What were you going to say?
So with Frat and them doing what they do, they are incredibly zealous about defending their ESSs. They're incredibly zealous about defending their loot, and they're incredibly active. There's a reason why they're being successful right now. They're doing what CCP wants them to do.
And even they have lost 50% of their ratting income because of the exchanges.
You're misconstruing. Frat have a rule. And this is coming from Elo, who was a head FC for Frat and kind of ran Frat for a long time when Norris was out.
Right.
They have a rule. You cannot use a super carrier or a Rorqual unless you have a subcap in the standing fleet ready to defend it. So you have to dual box. You can't go ratting your super carrier, bodied or otherwise, because they're kind of turned the blind eye to that. You cannot use a super carrier unless you have like a Munin or a Scimitar ready to go in the standing fleet. So if they have 100 ratting super carriers, they have 100-man subcap fleet ready to bridge to any one of those. It's like their rule. So the only thing that's going to affect Owasso and put danger on those super carriers are two groups. One, the groups that used to be whoever used to own the drones before Fraternity and Horde and everyone moved up there. I forget their name, but they were really good at hiding super carriers. Who? Sorry.
Skill U before.
Skill U. So you don't have skill U's anymore. They're not in the game. You don't see anyone like what PL used to be way back in the day, what skill U was. There's no group that's willing to go live in Owasso out of a random hole in the wall and then terrorize Owasso. Owasso is a Care Bear heaven. It's impossible to get dreads to unless you log them off for weeks, right? You have to literally jump them 5-6 jumps deep into Owasso, log them off, leave them there, and then maybe you'll kill a super carrier or two, but you won't get a fleet, right? And so that's what makes Owasso the best. I mean, I think Era said this once, Malefice and Owasso are the two best regions in the game, period, right now. None. There's no other. Malpay, sorry, whatever the term is.
The Malefice doesn't exist.
So whatever, the phrase. You know what I mean? Like those are the two most unassailable regions for AFK ratting and mining, period. Nobody is going to go hunting there. There's no entity in the game. Like when you speak of entities, I'm talking like the corporation.
But ESS has drawn a lot of people to hunt there, and filaments get them there.
But 10-man gang going after ESS is going to get murdered by a 100-man mutant fleet. I'm sorry. There's just
I see what you're saying.
It's not going to make a dent in the income, right? It's still
it did 50% is what I'm telling you.
But that's a lot of changes, right? That's scarcity and like policy changes and things like that. But they're still number one in the game because of that. They're literally untouchable. They have Branch and they have Owasso. Branch does the same thing, but Branch can get harassed by Venal, so it doesn't have that same extent that Owasso does. Even Horde literally would have a standing fleet of 150 or so guys in Malpai ready to go to defend Horde space. They don't even need that right now, and they're still ratting and mining at levels they were before.
We're at the end of the show, but I just want to make this observation. And of course, this is an observation. That's all it is. But it seems to me like instead of looking at some of the winning things that you did, Boat, and other people in the Imperium, and kind of pushing those forward, I felt like there was a lot of anger towards CCP's austerity measures to channel the anger that people are feeling, their membership, as kind of a displaced villain. Right? Like,
why?
Because they're losing a war. The Imperium's losing a war, it looks like.
So?
To Pappy, but they're mad at CCP.
I mean,
so they're taking that anger of not winning and aiming it towards CCP. It just seems really weird to me.
It's
I
not
wonder
weird,
what you think of that.
So you got to think of it like this, right? With Goons, we have been evicted from our space over the last 12 years that I played the game pretty much all the time. Either we've moved or been evicted from space in the game numerous times.
But that's not what you project. You project stability, power, money, and join us because we're winning. Like that's what
join us because you're going to have fun. I say this to anyone ever join Goons.
That's true.
Go on a boat up, Matterall. I guarantee you'll leave that out having fun. I guarantee it. You will have fun before.
I have fun watching you. You're one of my favorite players to watch.
If you die, I can promise you one thing on a boat up. You will die, right? That's all I promise. Now, do you die on most of my ops? Probably not. I'd say 9 out of 10 times you'll live. But that's the whole point. That's what Goons bring to the table, and they have brought to the table since Goons lived in Syndicate, right? When Goons were fighting off Bob in Syndicate, it was, hey, join Darius Johnson, join Suis, join a Skavik. You're going to have a whole shitload of fun. You may win something amazing, but you're probably not going to win something amazing. That's the reason we've always had this rule: fly what you can afford to lose. 100 Rifters still matter in Goons. Even today, you'll see little like bomber fleets of 5 or 10 guys shooting Falcons. There might be 10 Falcons with Sinos up.
It's cool, but everything you're talking about is the Imperium members, the goon guys that are in there, and like you, like to get in there and do the stuff.
See, that's what matters, because if Delve falls,
the messaging is totally different. The messaging coming out of Imperium is totally different than that.
Sure, because at the end of the day, like the goons know the numbers, right? At the end of the day, goons will eventually lose the war. It would take a very drastic change by CCP to flip this war. It's going to happen someday. It may not be tomorrow. It may be a year from now. But goons will eventually lose. I mean, the world knows this. There isn't a person that plays the game that knows where gooners are going to win 100%. It has been stated for like the last 6 months. Okay, the numbers are just unreal. You see goons form up 1,000 guys as Goons Swarm Federation, and then Horde forms up within 3. It's 1,000 guys. But then there's still that other 1,000 or 2,000 in the wing, right? Goons used to have that ability to have 3,000 when they had all of their allies together and all their friends and test and all this. But 2/3 of the game versus 1/3, the 1/3 always loses. It happened to NC and Tribute. It happened to us in Delve in the past. It's happened numerous times in the game's history. But what really unites players in EVE Online, and I will speak to all of EVE Online on this, is that the hatred towards CCP fucking up. Because they have been fucking uphill, making mistakes going uphill for 12 years.
But they were making mistakes when you were making money hand over fist, and there was no complaining at that point.
I still complained. What are you talking about? Have you not watched the Meta Show for the last 3 years?
I watched it
daily.
I watched and been a part of INN, so I'm familiar.
Has made so many mistakes,
but that wasn't until Blackout, right? Like there were no mistakes.
Hold on.
No. Before Blackout, a second interceptor. My Crow being able to 14K a second was the greatest thing on the planet. He took.
We have Niden here who actually played back then. What were you saying?
No, just saying, I think the kind of overarching thing that's united EVE players throughout the years has been the hatred towards goons, hasn't it?
No, because
people hate goons more than they hate CCP.
I guess today kids would call it a meme. It's a meme to like, okay, fuck goons, right? But at the end of the day, if you had a choice between shooting goons and shooting CCP ships, I guarantee you all of you would go shoot CCP ships and say, okay, I'll get back to goons tomorrow.
I think they would. Honestly, I think they would.
But hold on. There's a point here.
Let me ask this question. There's a point here. Everybody, hold on. Let me ask you this.
What's the point, Niden? Wait, what's the point, Niden? Then Boat can answer.
Okay.
So just this having interacted with goons over quite a few years. I mean, over I don't know how long it's been, but many years. Goons have always been the kind of punching bag of EVE in more ways than one. Like it was always popular to hate goons, right? That was the goons' role, and it was embraced by goons throughout the years. You know.
Still is.
And it's an important storyline in the kind of EVE mythology, you know. Hating goons has been a thing that a lot of people do. And I remember, you know, just when I was in Snuffbox, we would join that side because they were hated, and there was Snuffbox thing too. But you know, it's been driving a lot of conflict. It's been uniting a lot of players and driving a lot of these wars. You know,
here's an example.
People have been hating goons more than they've been hating CCP.
Here's an example on how I view the hate of goon. Okay, and then I know that's from a lot of like personal relationships over the years and real life meetups and stuff like that. People hate goons until they hang out with goons. And then they hang out with goons either in real life or like they get to know goons, and then they're like, oh, these guys are freaking cool. And then they start playing with goons. And even if they play with goons for 6 months or a year or whatever, they still do. Look at Snuff, or Snuff is a prime example of this. Snuff hated goons for the longest time. And then a guy named Jay Amazinus comes along, becomes really good friends with Y-2ANO, and then now they became buddies. And they even lived and worked in our coalition for like about a year or so. And even now, they're still buddies who I can message Y-2ANO now and say, yo, let's have a chat, and boom, perfect. Every person that's ever flown with goons can probably say that, except for the ones that never really like got immersed into like the way goons play the game, right? So even if Delve dies tomorrow, goons are still goons. You'll still have the same number of people still going off and doing the same things together. And I think that that's something that's very different from a lot of alliances, because a lot of alliances tend to be built around, okay, I'm going to keep my corp together, and then my corp is going to go off and do something. Whereas goons, it's the whole, right? The whole stays together and bounces from place to place to place to place. And then whoever comes with us, and groups may come and go, but they'll still be with us.
I will say, and I'm going to be quick because I know Maccloud wants to come in too. I will say that there's one interesting anomaly there, and that's probably Villy, right? So Villy was in Goon Swarm for a while, right? And now he's not. It's weird. Anyways, Maccloud, please.
Interesting thing about Villy.
No.
He told me, I quote, Villy said as he left Goons, "Oh, I'm just leaving to go do my own thing. I'm not really going to join any group, and I definitely don't want to shoot Goons." Not even like a month later, he was in test and declaring war on Goons. Just saying.
Oh, okay, well, he can.
That's not much of an anomaly.
Maccloud, you wanted to add before we close?
Oh yeah. So I had two kind of issues with what has been said in the last like 15 minutes of the show, right? One thing, Niden, I appreciate and respect you and everything like that, but like the kind of the way that you were talking about like goon, like everyone versus goons kind of thing, you make it sound as though almost as if like goons aren't Eve players. We are Eve players. Like, so you can't just, separate goons out from, there's goons and then there's Eve players. We're all
no,
Eve
I didn't
players.
suggest that at all. Like, why would I?
Well,
that's not
it
at
is,
all the thing.
it was how you were suggesting it.
Hold on. No. A lot of people have made like Eve history and made a lot of the most interesting storylines we've had in this game through being hated. I mean, Snuff took that to the level that we could. It was a thing, and Goons were doing that forever. And a lot of other groups have been doing that. I think that's really an essential part of Eve. I would say that's very much Eve. I'm not calling that like these are not Eve players at all. I'm saying this is important. Like, this is one of the reasons people log in and listen to shows like this and follow the politics and fucking write books about this shit. It's important.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that, like, listening back to what you were saying and how you were saying it, it definitely felt as though you were
also goons
sidelining goons as not being Eve players.
If you listen to if you listen to like the Matani and all the people that were talking out of goons, that's also been a storyline as well. So there's like the rest of Eve, and then there's goons, right? It's a part of the storyline, which I think that's essential.
Anyway.
Yeah, from some perspective, we'll wrap up after this. It's I can't say it. Somebody said it in chat once, and I picked it up because I thought it was brilliant. But goons seem to say like, "Hey, we're being excluded. We're not considered Eve players." Okay, but the way that we see it from the outside, not me necessarily, but the way it's seen from the outside is goons hate everything that's not goon. Like, everything that's not goon is pubby. It's
not about the hate.
You're not hate. Hate's a strong word. But
no. See, goons. That's what makes goons like still function after like they'll lose a region. Like, all right, if you watch, like, for example, when Test lost Fountain that one time, right? They lost the whole region. They split up and went their own ways, and it took a very long time for like the core group of Test, like Sapporo, Jones, and all that, to kind of rebuild it. And actually, they became Brave first, if you remember, because that became the next Reddit group, and it sprung up, and everyone went to Brave. So Test never really got rebuilt for a very long time. Whereas with Goons, when Goons lose a region or like move, it tends to stay Goons. You don't really lose that core group that's either always with Goons and never really leaves. And that's what makes Goons very unique, is that, yeah, a lot of people hate that about Goons. Because, again, like I said, a lot of Eve is driven by the way CCP designed it, where corps kind of trump everything else. And it wasn't until recently that they made alliances control this. But like, I think that, what's his name? Hateless would say, is that think about the small groups. A lot of corps have that mentality of, well, my corp is all that matters. And a lot of alliances fighting against us have that, where it's their own little tribe, their own little small group. It's not the alliance as a whole. And you could disband Test tomorrow, and every single one of those corps would probably find a different alliance to join pretty quickly. Whereas a vast majority of Goons, I think, if you were to like take away Goons and then Goon Core, and they were to quit playing Eve, Goons would just die. You wouldn't see that group like move on to the next thing. They would just all quit Eve and kind of go on to the next game. And I think that's the difference between Goons and a lot of groups. It's not so much that we hate everyone that's not Goons, is that the core Goon group will literally go play other games together. You'll have 200-300 guys go play another game together if that game allows that many people to play together, and then come back to Eve and play it a couple months later, and then go back to another game. And that's a dynamic that I don't think a lot of alliances have.
Even Goon Swarm doesn't move to other games, though. Like, I've seen it not happen. You know what I mean? Like, they play a little bit in other games, but it's a handful, just like anybody else. And then
Sure.
they don't move from.
If you have enough people in a community, And at the end of the day, when somebody in that community that is an influencer of the community, people will come play that game with them. That's how that works.
It doesn't work though. Eve players don't travel very well to other games.
Yeah, they don't.
With other people.
They're like, for example, again, it comes down to that.
We're not really video game players.
And
No,
even
it's a community. Goons are a community. If there's people in the community playing another game, there are also other people that exist in that community that are in the same niche there. You play Eve, and you play WoW. You play Eve, and you play Call of Duty. You're going to play together. Why not?
All right. At least you had something you wanted to throw in here.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit, right?
All right.
I do think that when you're with a group for a long time, the way that Boat has been, there's probably like a lot of belief that, hey, like no matter what happens, we'll stick together. And the people around Boat is a cult of personalities, right? So the people around Boat will always hang out with Boat because they love Boat. I love Boat. But kind of going back a little bit, I think there are some really poignant things to be gleaned from the journeys that Boat took us on through the course of this show. One of which is that, and it kind of rings true to me, that there aren't really no medium-sized groups anymore. There are no Black Legions. There are no nomadic versions of Pandemic Legion, right? When PL was a super nomadic group. There are no like skill yourselves. There are no like groups like that anymore. And part of the problem is that CCP kind of made it this way because it made no sense to be a small group, or you had to be a big group or get out. And it does seem through these changes, these austerity changes, that they're trying to dial that back, to unwind that clock a bit, to restore the medium-sized groups to be able to function, and to punish the larger groups a little bit and make them not want to be there, give them other opportunities elsewhere in space. So a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of the people that are in nullsec right now, they're there because it was the best place to make money. You're playing a video game, you want to make money to get things and do stuff, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
that's what I think about nomadic. Or not nomadic.
So I think removing those people, the austerity measures, a lot of the beating isn't meant to like make people leave. It's meant to move them to other parts of the game and stuff like that. And if there's one thing that you learned from this episode, right, or through this podcast, is that there are very distinct versions of Eve that people play that completely oblivious to the other side. And that part is really fascinating to me. And I hope that a lot of people, when they see this austerity stuff, instead of necessarily complaining, absolutely complain when complaining is due. I'm not saying never complain, but I hope that they look around and say, hey, what am I doing here? Let me go try another area of the game. And you'll rediscover and reinvigorate a lot of the love that you have for Eve when you started. Like people like Niden, when they come back, they're coming back and doing something in a completely new area and having, well, completely new area from what most people have, and are having a ton of fun. So I hope people like rediscover that joy. I like I said, there are a lot of complaints about the scarcity. There are a distinct lack of carrots, but I'm hoping that that's going to change. And I also hope players change their behavior a little bit.
Okay, one last thing. Thank you, Elise. One last thing from Maccloud, then we'll close up.
So, just coming back to something you said, Matterall, in actual fact, and I know it's your opinion, and that's completely fine to have your opinion, kind of thing. But like, I did feel it was a little bit egregious, sort of saying that both sort of comments throughout the show was basically just some kind of way of, or Boat's comments and general sort of goon media, as of late, being basically some kind of deflection as to what's going on in the game, and just basically throwing shade towards CCP. Specifically about this show, like this show is based on topics, and we're here to talk about those topics based on our perspective. So I think it's a little bit kind of harsh to basically rail against Boat, saying that all of the points being made by him are basically to sort of deflect from them and to CCP, when
I was saying that
the
about
topics were specifically.
Another thing too is I haven't really paid attention to Goons until like the couple weeks ago when we went on like full virtual only because I've been so busy with work. Because I ain't gonna lie, if you're a teacher in this environment, it is like triple the work that you're used to doing. I can tell you from experience, it's a nightmare.
My wife's a teacher. You're right. Yeah.
Anyway,
dealing with the whole virtual thing is just like 3 times the work. You would think it wouldn't be, but it is. It's crazy. Like actually teaching's easier, but the other part anyway. But moving on. The interesting thing about this war is something that's being done in this war that I haven't seen done ever, and I've been doing this a long time. Is the way that the enemy approaches morale and the way we approach morale. So for us, okay, like if you assume the upper end idea or the essential problem is that goons will lose. Okay, so if you assume that's the top viewpoint, then you take that as your lens of focus, and then you look at the war as a whole that way. You'll see goons form up, or say, okay, we're going to form up at 0200, and to counter, let's say, a test op at 0200. Then when goons make that broadcast, hey, we're going to form up, and test has a form up. Then, like, all the other groups and all the alliances supporting Test will then say, oh my God, goons are hyping this up. We've got to form up and fight them. And they use that as their, like, morale driver to bring people to the fight. So it's like kind of like a bait and switch. You'll see goons, like, not too interested about something, then you won't see anything. But a second somebody says, oh, hey, we're going to form up, then goons will form. And then everybody else goes, oh my God, we've got to form up. Goons are now forming. They're hyping this. Look what they've done all day. And they'll use that as a thing. And the thing that's surprising about it in this war is that while that might have been done before, the extent of which people still believe that that's true, the goons are like mad hyping and we've got to go fight them and it's going to be this huge fight. Day after day after day, it's just unbelievable. Like when you look at Horde still pulling the numbers that they're pulling, it shocks me that they can still constantly say in like 10 or 15 pings before an op, hey, we're going to have this huge fight. Even if there's not going to be a fight. Like it used to be back in the day, if you trolled your members with this idea of guaranteed content, they won't come the next day if there's no content. Like the idea of, oh great, another boat pause shot, right? But nowadays, at least in the Horde case, that's been thrown out the fucking window. Like I'm seeing like the pings that I see from Horde, it is unfathomable how much they can do.
Let me just make it clear. I wasn't saying that what Boat is doing is diverting. No, but I just want to make that clear to Maccloud. I was saying what the meta show and the Fireside and other stuff seems to be doing that. And I'll just end with this. The idea that there are spies in your corporation makes you crazy, and you want to stamp out those spies, and you end up creating more spies with the way you message. And I almost feel like the Imperium, their messaging is creating the momentum, the energy that is holding their enemy together. The people who are involved are not just Villy. Everybody looks at Villy because he's public and he's on these shows or whatever. But Vince Draken, he's got an internal heat to destroy Goon Swarm. You look at Gobbins, he's on fire underneath. His soul is on fire. No, if you look at
look at this. Look at
the guys coming at, like, headliner, maybe not, but the guys coming at
Vince. Oh, Vince. But look what he's done recently, right? Because of his like drive and fire for this war, you have a guy go have fun, right? This guy goes and has fun and is immediately kicked and banned. And then Vince goes, anyone else want to have fun? Like, what? Goons? I mean, if a goon director ever did that to a person, Mittens would shoot the director in the back of the head and say, get the fuck out. Like, I've never heard of someone being told they can't have fun.
Neither here nor there. The point is their anger is constantly, like, the messaging is creating the spies, right? That's what I was trying to say with the spy thing. Like, sometimes you have people that come in from the outside to try to destroy you, but sometimes you create your own enemies.
Yeah, Goblins does that a lot.
Yeah, I feel like maybe, I don't know. I feel like that is something that is not really talked about much, but just how much damage the messaging is doing to the Imperium itself every day is surprising to me that doesn't really actually get topic.
Yeah, but isn't it also the thing that keeps it all together? I mean, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It has always been this way.
I think it tries to keep everything together, but it also keeps the enemy together. And at this point, I wonder if it's doing its job. Like, I wonder if you couldn't be a more humble leader or a different type of leader for an organization that big.
It's better for goons or other?
I don't know. It seems like it's good for goons and it's good for the enemies. Like,
here's an interesting bit is that okay? Here's an example. Horde closed recruitment before the war started, and the amount of like 1-day-old newbie spies that you could get into Horde was very, very small. But since the war's been going on, I've gotten like 6 characters in the Horde that I'm just waiting to abuse and use.
A ton of them shooting the Keep Star when it was planted, remember?
Well, no, like imagine the third imposter concept. It's really funny. They didn't catch number 1 or number 2. So they may have kicked out the guy who wasn't the imposter that was pretending to be one. But they still didn't get the real imposter.
But those are spies coming in that don't like. Those are you guys coming in. But the point is, it doesn't seem like Gobbins is creating internal.
Yes, because I mean, look at that alliance that got disbanded by goons. That was a guy who just got tired of the way he was getting treated, came to Mittens and was like, "Look, I have the keys to do all this stuff. Do you want to do it?" And Mittens like, "Yeah, sure." And you can come live with goons after you're done. Like. That's a thing. That's a thing that I think goons have done. That other alliances haven't done.
That was not in Horde. That was internal record.
No, not Horde. But see, Horde. Okay, we had a Horde guy do that. There was a guy that stole 400 billion from Horde when Horde had like a mining buyback program, and he stole 400 billion and turned off a whole bunch of stuff, and then came and joined goons, and then hunted Horde for the next year and set up a lot of whole content. But that.
Yeah, I mean, it happens.
I think that's the thing that like goons do that others don't do enough of. There are so many disgruntled probably people in goons that don't get like sniped out as often as they should. I think the last one was Pittsburgh, but that's because he kind of thought he was more important than he was, and when he got told to stop doing things, he just threw a hissy fit and left. But that tends to happen. I mean, okay, here we go. You mentioned that. I know you got to go soon, but there was a goon director. This happened in the 12 years I played the game. This happened once where a friend of mine gave me a free trip to Mexico and said, bring some goon friends, because he was a goon. And so I was like, okay, Mittens and all these other directors. I was like, you want to go to Mexico for free? And we spent a week in Cancun on an all-expenses 5-star resort that my buddy owned. And
that was you.
What?
You're the one that put that together. Okay.
Yes, I've done it twice. Anyway.
I remember this.
The one time we stayed in a 5-star resort. Next time we stayed in a little cabana with 8-9 rooms and had the ocean for a view. But anyway, the first time we went, I remember we were sitting around enjoying a wonderful meal at breakfast. It was a nominate night. And this one director went fuck goons. This is the proper term for it. And he was from, I guess, Korea or something like that. I can't remember where he was from, but he went fuck goons. And his main reason behind leaking all these logs and going fuck goons was because we didn't invite him to go to Mexico. And it was like, I don't even know you, dude. Like, why would I invite you? I've never even talked to you in game. And it's like, that's the last time I remember that happening. That was like 5-6 years ago now. But like, that's the kind of thing. Lemba. Yeah, and so that's like the thing with goons. It's like, you just don't see that inner circle get betrayed as often as you do in other alliances. I mean, it happened to Bob 3 or 4 times. It's happened to PL. Usually the PL guys tend to return all the stuff they steal and come back when they steal everything. I remember there
not always.
Yeah, there used to be this like running meme where like a guy would steal like the dread cache of like 60 dreads and like a bunch of carriers and a bunch of stuff, and he would disappear for like a couple of weeks, and then he would come and give it all back because he didn't really want to leave PL. And so he
talked to Elise.
You would have things like that happen in other alliances where like outside of PL and goons, I don't think that's ever happened where like the inner circle guys tend not to leave, right? You still have like the same guys, and if they do leave, they only leave temporarily. Like guys will leave and come back or whatever. But you just don't. I've never really seen that in goons where guys like, without joining goons with the intent to destroy it from the inside, which Limba claimed he was doing originally. You just don't see that in goons.
Cartoon though, right?
Cartoon was never originally like. But see, cartoon was different though. All right, here we go. You say cartoon.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I know.
That's a good point. Cartoon was never an SA goon.
The biggest self-destruct in history, Boat.
He was the first CEO in goon history to not be from SA. So he comes along. Right. It just gets handed to it because the guy had it before. But here we go. He said to me like a week or 2 before he stole everything. He's like, my wife once wanted me to go to Cancun because he was having his honeymoon in Cancun. He's like,
Cancun again, Mexico. Yeah, at the bottom of it all is Mexico.
Yes, he goes. And to be honest with you, I just saw $10,000 worth of space money that I could RMT and pay for my 10 grand honeymoon in Mexico. So that's why I robbed goons. It had nothing to do with like being like killing goons or any vitriol to goons. He just saw a Trillion-esque lying there. Was like, I can RMT that and pay for my trip to Mexico.
We'll just call it a war bond. It was a massive war bond that he cashed in and went to Mexico. Okay, that's all we have time for. My God, we went over a lot, but we love Boat. We love hearing from him. Suitonia, thanks for hanging around when it was the quiet times. And Hateless, you too. I know you guys are subject matter experts and experts on mechanics and stuff. The politics, not so much. You're a cup of tea, but thanks for hanging out with us. Niden, good to see you back. Elise, as always, thanks for being here. Caleb actually had to get off screen, but he's still around. And Maccloud for jumping in today. Thank you all. It was a big show, so I'm glad we had a lot of time with you guys. And want to say thanks. We are going to be back next week with more Talking in Stations. We, of course, had to take some holidays off. And that's all I got. The last thing is, if you want news every day in your mailbox in the game, sign up for the mail list called TIS News. And you will get like a little newspaper every day. In fact, people have started to pay $4.99, 4ISK.99, I guess, that when they get the paper, which I think is very cute. All right. So thank you guys very much. We will see you next time on Talking in Stations.
Oops, sorry, typing again.
It's all right.